Good morning. Good morning, good morning, everyone. Yes, it works. Fantastic. Thank you that you're all here today for the second day of Nordic Blockchain Conference. If you can hear me, feel free to join us here on stage at stage 2. Of course, as you all know, downstairs there's another fantastic day, morning indeed, and as well as afternoon with keynotes, panel discussions and whatnot. Here today, we'll be speaking about lots of interesting topics, including decentralized AI, just now actually, very, very briefly, and shortly starting. Then we'll also tap into crypto taxation, compliance, tokenization, the stablecoin landscape, and so many other things, as well as a special focus later today on the landscape here in the Nordics, because obviously we are here all gathered at the Stockholm epicenter, the epic epicenter, as I like to say, for day 2. What is really important to mention, I think you were also here yesterday, many of you were, that of course Nordic Blockchain Conference can't be organized without the main organizers, such as Nordic Blockchain Association, a wonderful group of people with many, many different stakeholders united, so feel free to check them out if you don't know them yet, which that means that you probably lived under a stone for the last day, because you probably have met them and you have already, connected with them, but if not, connect with them either here in person or connect with them on the on the networking app, because I'm Alex, I'm the founder and CEO of TRM Labs. We are not a Nordic company, but almost. We're from the Netherlands, a startup with a global team. We're building Web3 networking and event solutions, and we are building, for instance, the networking app that some of you have used. You can also use it after, right, to connect with some people that you didn't catch yet here in real life and just connect with them after. It's just a small tool, and yeah, we're a Dutch startup working hard to help people connect in a fair and efficient way. Now, enough from my side. What I would love to say for a few seconds is that we have wonderful sponsors. I will mention them, one by one a little bit over the next couple of sessions. Yesterday I mentioned 35 sponsors in a row, which I think caused me to get out of breath. So what we're going to do now is that, first of all, I would love to thank one of the key sponsors, a few of the most important, so to say, sponsors, although of course every sponsor is important and appreciated. But I would love to start to say thank you to Bybit, the BSV Association, DFNS, as well as TRM Labs. They will also be speaking, many of them, later today. And also the after party, right? The official after party is also co-organized by the Nordic Blockchain Association alongside alongside BSV Association and the blockchain that, of course, they're helping to build. Now, said that, I think all the official announcement has been created and shared with you so far. I hope you have a lovely day, sincerely. And what we're going to do now is finally starting with the first panel discussion about AI on-chain. Where do we see the real utility of decentralized AI agents? Let me just click. Yes, it works. All right, so what I would love to do is announce these wonderful speakers to you. I think many of them are already gathered here. So first of all, I would love to welcome on stage Anna Tutova of AI Crypto Minds. I think I've already seen you. Please feel free to put your hands together if you have some energy this morning, maybe after a long after party. Anna is the founder of AI Crypto Minds, is a public speaker and expert in public relations and business development. And AI Crypto Minds itself is, if I'm correct, a global PR, marketing, advisory, and growth strategies organization, really, that has ample connections. Now, alongside Anna, we also welcome on stage, of course, César Soto Valero of SEB or SEB. Explain it to me, to us later. You're originally from Cuba, I've seen that, and you moved to Sweden to pursue a PhD, I saw, and you breathe AI. I read that about you, so very, very curious to hear how you're going to breathe AI on stage this morning. Yes, you also represent, of course, SEB or SEB, which is a leading Northern European financial services group. Now, Devon, we already saw you on stage. Please welcome Devon again. You're building lots of different projects, I know that. So you're the CTO of Swarp, I believe, right? And also, yeah, you're basically also the founder of Smart Software Services BV, which made some people think you were Dutch. You are Dutch. That's fantastic. aangenaam. I'm Dutch as well, so that's great to see another Dutch person on stage. You're doing a lot as a CTO. I won't mention it all. Check out their website. Like, they're doing awesome projects. Elias, oh yeah, you're also here of Dwellir. Please welcome him on stage as well. Product manager at Dwellir, focused on building practical Web3 infrastructure and decentralized solutions. And yeah, you're building a lot, right? You support over 120 blockchains, I believe, with your company, right? Fantastic. And last but not least, of course, all the way from Concordium, we already saw him at check-in, Boris, Bohrer-Bilowitzki. I know. Please correct me. Thank you for being here. Welcome us on stage. CEO of Concordium, of course. Fantastic that you're here. Much appreciated. And you're also involved with copper.co, I saw. Maybe you can elaborate on that if that is important. Please take it all away and talk about decentralized AI agents. Thank you all.
Hello, good morning. I have the pleasure to lead the conversation today with all these beautiful people on stage here. Like it was mentioned, we're going to talk a bit about AI on chain. And I think the best way to start the convo is to get maybe some semantics and experiences out of the way. So I'd want to go down the line and just have everyone say a few words about what your sort of personal and work experience is using AI, so everyone has a bit of a better idea what perspective you're coming from in this conversation, and yeah, how are you using AI nowadays in general, not only on blockchain, and then we'll get into sort of how this all comes together with blockchain down the line. You can also just start, Devon, and then just popcorn it around, throw it to the next person.
Hi everyone, I'm Devon Martens. I am currently building Blocksite and Swarp, so I'm a fractional CTO at Swarp. And essentially how I'm using AI is we take wallet data and we predict its next move. So this helps both protocols and liquidity providers understand if liquidity or users are at risk of leaving, and how they should support those users and protect their money. Who's next?
You decide. You just pass it on to the next person, and then.
All right. So hello everyone. At SEB, I am a data scientist in charge of putting these AI agents to work for us. There are many initiatives, and we are making a lot of progress in this regard, especially when it comes to optimizing internal processes. So traditional banking is a lot of paperwork, and these AI agents are very suitable for this. And we are putting in place many agentic workflows that allows to optimize a big chunk of the business. And this is where we see the most of the advantages. And I am a technical person, so meaning that I am driving this through code.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here today. And on my side, I'm mostly on the PR marketing side and as well media. So I use AI a lot for content generation, and as well I run a YouTube podcast. So AI is a perfect tool for making viral automated shots. Additionally, our team uses AI tools for different social media promotions, for automatic replies, and etc. On the personal side, of course, like everybody, I use a lot of chatbot interfaces and etc. But our clients use AI for different use cases, for AI payments, for AI trading, AI treasury management, DeFi yield optimization, and etc. And additionally, I'm developing an AI startup, which is currently in the stealth mode. It's called Autonomy Capital, and it's first autonomous institution which will finance end-to-end AI companies. So imagine that in the future, probably majority of companies will not be operated by humans. So there will be a lot of companies with just one or a few human employees, and everything else will be done by AI, because AI can much better make decisions, as well make analytics, analyze different data, market sentiment, and etc. So we're going to apply mostly specifically for automation of e-commerce trading. So AI agents will be able to decide what goods it's better to buy, when to sell, to whom to sell, and etc. And we see that already AI technology quite optimizes all the processes and can increase the efficiency and increase the profits of the companies.
Boris, I guess, now.
Sure.
The last option.
Yeah, hi, Boris. Very flattering picture here. Yeah, I'm originally, well, there are two parts because you mentioned it. Yeah, I'm the co-founder of Copper. My involvement is just being a shareholder now, which is quite nice. But Concordium, I think, is was the calling for me for a while. Started thinking about AI in 2024, I think, when everybody was still using Perplexity as a proxy for Google. Concordium is in existence for a while. And the uniqueness about it for me at the time was that identity is built into the base layer. There are two more lines to this, which is protocol level tokens, meaning like protocol level issuance, stepping away from smart contracts. I know a thing or two about custody, and smart contract should never take custody of funds. Specifically lately we've seen that. And then protocol level locks. Now how does that apply to AI? At the beginning of the year, I've taken the decision in order to, number one, make the entire project agentic first, meaning we got rid of nearly 90% of the workforce, simply because we didn't need them anymore, specifically with the advent of Opus 4.6. But more importantly, moved the entire chain towards the agentic economy, meaning that right now you have loads of agents. I mean, we're hearing it, you know, and you're reading it everywhere. Agents can trade, have access to your wallets, move funds, whatever else it is. But they're basically doing this as ghosts, specifically in a regulated advent where we're sitting with regards to, you know, rightly or wrongly, the crypto cypherpunk in me goes like, fuck the Clarity Act. But then again, I would like to see it come to place because we just want to get DLT implemented globally. You need to have a level of accountability. And that currently does not exist. The only standard that is maybe a little bit known is ERC 8004, which in a nutshell doesn't do anything else but tell you that the agent that you interacted with yesterday is the same one you interact with today. We take this several levels further, meaning that you have an actual either human or business as an accountable party behind it. You interact in a completely privacy preserved way using zero knowledge proofs, and subsequently have a full audit trail, meaning that once in a business somebody has changed a prompt, you've got, I don't know which agent's doing X, Y, Z, and something goes wrong, you need to figure out of where it went wrong and why. And we're currently the only blockchain in the world that can do this.
Cool. And you use AI in your personal life?
Oh yeah, for everything. I can't remember, it's been about 1.5 or 2 months since I last wrote an email.
Cool. I think the other term that I want to sort of get out of the room is what an agent is. I think maybe César, I would like to hear your opinion on someone with a PhD on it. You might be the most qualified person on stage to have a shot at defining a word for us plebs here. And yeah, no, but I think it's a very fun sort of discussion. There's a spectrum of like how autonomous does an agent have to be an agent? Is it just about tool use, etc.? So maybe your opinion, and then if anyone else on panel sort of disagrees with it, let's we can have a short, lively conversation about that. But I find that is maybe a good term to get defined before we dive deeper.
Yes. So over the last few years, the concept is converging into an entity that executes, that takes actions. So that is the current definition of agents, like the most widely accepted. And that is fundamentally different from what we had before. Before we have the LLMs, and they gave us information. They were able to crunch a lot of data through the large neural network. But then we managed to give these LLMs access to tools. Then we invented protocols like NCP and so on and so forth. And now we have fully agentic frameworks that can interact with the real world and then take actions. And this has completely changed the game, because now you don't need a human as before to crunch the information. Now you have an agent that does something, and then the human is more like a layer to verify what the agent does. Why? Because the agent still uses the transformer architecture, is non-deterministic, and it still has, still you cannot be 100% that the output is correct. So you have to always verify. And this, for finance, is critical. And now we go into the term agentic finance. So we grow a little bit, we narrow down in the scope. And then for agentic finance, it's an agent that can take financial decisions for us and then execute. And then we move into agentic finance for blockchain, and then I will let that to another one just to continue the discussion.
Anyone else have a point, Anna, on the what is an agent?
Yeah, so I would differentiate two times, and as well, we discussed with you before on the call that AI agents is considered when you totally automate all the decision making of this AI tool, of this AI agent. So before we had, and still we have, a lot of bots, but they're scripted by the human, by the actions, what they need to do. Or either they operate in a simulated environment, so they don't have a full autonomy for their decisions, what to do next, what to buy, what to sell, or like what data analyze, where to go, to which site to go, to whom to write, to whom to send the payment, and etc. And in case of AI agents, this is totally automated, all their decision making. So you just give the general task, and then it decides the route for the solution. What will be the most optimal way to decide to resolve this or that task, and to give this or that output. And as well, I would like to add something on the statistics for AI agents. So we for the year since May 2025 till April 2026, we saw that over $73 million were settled as for 176 million transactions, but 76% of that was still made not by AI agents, but by different AI bots, or like different market-making solutions and their bots. So it was still not totally autonomous.
Sorry, thank you. And this is exactly what the problem is. I think everybody wants to jump on the hype cycle, which is very usual for our industry. And we can have a whole separate discussion about how disappointed I am with the entire industry over the course of the last 5-6 years, which we built jack shit of value. Everybody just does the same crap, but that's a different story. What it ultimately comes down to is the last thing that this right now needs in order to actually be implemented globally is more intelligence. Intelligence is we've got enough of that. What's absolutely missing is the accountability. So in many ways, when it comes to regulated finance, when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to, like, there are regulations in place left, right, and center. I've had my fair share, specifically during, since I founded Copper, standing in and out of the SEC or the FCA or BaFin or I don't know what, which was a pain in the ass to say the least. Those guys are not going away. So if at all, specifically if we talk about autonomous decision-making, intelligent decision-making on the basis of AI models left, right, and center, and there's so much happening, like you think you're on top of the things this week, next week you're completely, it's such a quantum leap, it's absolutely incredible. So that intelligence layer is not what is needed with regards to what you would consider progress. What it ultimately is, where we go back to, like, how do you get adoption? It's only being seen as a liability. So you don't have that progress if you don't solve for core issues. Now, seeing all those businesses come up globally, solving for that in some, and I mean more like the efficiency layer and everything else, be faster, be better decision making, and it can do this now and it can do that now. We should actually take a step back and try to figure out how we can make sure that we don't screw it, because maybe I phrased this a little bit wrong. What it ultimately comes down to is the fact that it will be killed in its infancy if we don't solve for those specific problems. Like SEB, I'm just going to single you out right now. You guys are not going to integrate check shit and use it specifically when it comes to trading or moving money if it's not compliant, right? It's as simple as. And the same, like I say, when I said this earlier, like my cypherpunk in myself goes like, please veto the Clarity Act. The guy that actually would like to see DLT technologies implemented globally goes like, please get it done before July 4th. But we will see what will happen.
Mm-hmm. Devon, do you have any thoughts on the discussion so far? I can also ask the next question if you'd rather sit this one out.
Either way is fine, right? An agent is simply, it makes decisions based on the rules you give it to, you tell it to. We've gone a little bit left and right as to like what this means in terms of the industry that we're in, but it's really like the utility behind it is what the company has set it to be, how you do this, and if or not your strategy is intelligent or not. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you can go to the next question.
All right. I think now that we know a bit about what an agent is, we know how everyone's sort of feeling about AI or the crypto industry in general. I think what I would like to sort of get into next is to talk a bit about what specific examples of agentic finance have you seen in the wild, interacted with, used, built, worked on, that are already out there, right? Where do we see utility right now? And then just a little spoiler afterwards. In the next step, I want to talk a bit about what's maybe missing, and I'm sure Boris, for example, has the answer there with Concordium. But I think it would be interesting for me to see sort of the current state of agentic finance. What do you see working? Ideally, sort of involved in blockchain. Can also be just maybe internally at SEB, if you can share some of the things that are happening there. And then, yeah, so I think that that's the question. And as a last thing, AI doesn't necessarily always have to mean language model, right? I think that's also a thing. AI is so conflated with the general transformer language model at the moment. There's other machine learning approaches that, technically speaking, fall under the same category and are maybe, when we talk about financial actions, more relevant. But yeah, Devon, maybe you start, since you're literally building an agentic finance product.
Yeah, sure. So the strongest agent, as you've discussed, right? You said, we were able to let go of some of our team because Opus came out. These are different models. That's what, Sonnet versus Opus are different models. So the strongest agent has the best data and runs on the best model. And it's not whether or not, you can automate a task with Claude or not. It's how you're using this data in order to complete an agenda. So, you mentioned we're building an AI product. What we're doing is we are building an AI product on chain, and this is to help the financial structure of any organization that uses us by making it so that they can essentially make more money by getting the users what they want and figuring out what that user wants. And this is what across the board AI has been doing. When you sit down and you turn on Netflix, maybe after this conference tonight, your account is going to show you what you might want to watch based on what you've watched. And these are the at every level, this decision-making process is happening, whether or not it's your account automating a transaction on, chain because you've set a rule in order for it to do so, or a system making a suggestion for you.
Yeah, and I guess for your product, right, the appeal there is that you have a machine learning model that does this sort of pattern recognition and then has the ability to, like César mentioned, take action to try and prevent a customer from churning, right? Or like a user from churning for a given protocol, right? So that's live and working, and there's real utility already happening based on these systems, from what I understood from your pitch yesterday.
Yes, this is true. So, people are talking about the safety with AI, especially when you're automating transactions, and our model is based off of, it's based off of Swan SF, which I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole because I want to give everybody else a chance to speak, but essentially one of our founders was the head of AI on the Artemis mission and has had 30 years of NASA grant funding. And what some of his key contributions are protecting astronauts outside of the Earth's magnetosphere, because you get 8 seconds, right, from a solar flare to not good results if you're outside of the Earth's magnetosphere, as you can imagine. So this is AI that people have trusted their lives on because they have to predict the solar flares 72 hours previously. And it's the same thing. If a user leaves, you don't get a warning that your user's gone on chain. They've just churned like 70% of wallets due, according to Dune. So how do we keep people engaging with blockchain products? You have to find an answer, because otherwise it's all based on whether or not the users think that they're going to make money off of it, some speculation. You've said yourself, people produced a lot of junk in the past 5 years, and I can't agree more, but then that hurts the good products that are out there. And we don't want that. Everybody is here today because they know that there's real utility behind blockchain technology, and we want to see something happen with it.
Thank you.
No, please.
I was going to ask maybe Anna next, just to switch up the order a bit. But I mean, you, for example, with your PR firm, I assume talk to a ton of different projects. You run a podcast. You really plugged into the ecosystem. Where do you see sort of, and now you're building something in stealth as well, but where do you see like first actually useful implementations of agentic finance in the real world? Do you have some examples of what you've encountered there or used yourself?
Yeah, so currently we talk about AI specifically on-chain, and everybody talked about the risk convergence between AI and crypto, and the answer was yes. Crypto is the only currency for AI, because AI agents, they're not really able to get a traditional bank account to pass KYC. They only can pass Know Your Agent, so they need something else. They need a programmable digital currency, which is crypto. So we see the acceleration of stablecoin payments. Last year, the stablecoins transaction volume was over $33 trillion, and just this quarter, it was already at over $28 trillion. So we really see a massive acceleration, and it was driven by agentic payments and as well remittances and different other stablecoin payments. But we see the emergence of a new customer, not just human, who we humans used to send all this either stablecoin or other like Bitcoin or other tokens transactions, but we see the emergence of a new customer to which companies need to build for and need to cater for. So we will see in the future a fully autonomous economy driven in majority by AI agents, not by humans, because we even can see by then that one human, of course, majority of people still even haven't tried even ChatGPT or other chat interfaces, but otherwise, if you work in a corporation or if you're in startup world, you obviously probably used some AI agents too. And even if we take example of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang at the annual GTC conference told that 7.5 million AI agents are used by 75,000 employees. So it's really big. And then we see on the stable coins and payment side, the emergence of the biggest use case is is payments for AI agents. And we see that even the different payment gateway companies, they launched their services for these AI agents. Like, for example, MoonPay launched in February their MoonPay CLI. So they enable AI agents to pay in crypto, and they do the conversion to the merchants to fiat. So we see the emergence of the new market. They just recently as well did a partnership with OpenAI, so you can buy crypto just in ChatGPT via their services. Another use case, we see AI e-commerce. It can be both on-chain and as well with fiat. So AI agents can go, they can compare prices, decide where it's better to buy something, they can negotiate, execute the payment, and you get the goods or services. And of course, we have seen for a long time AI trading. It can be both via bots, so currently we see as well the involvement of AI agents. So as I told, they can make more autonomous and more sophisticated decisions. And as well, another use case is for treasury management, for DeFi yields optimization, and additionally for AI infrastructure payments too. And like example, we can see launched by Coinbase, Cloudflare, and other payments, the standard X402, which enables AI, either humans, developers, or AI agents to pay for APIs, or for compute, or for anything else. So via this standard, via this protocol, and they already processed over 50 million transactions.
Maybe César on the way back.
Yes, by now, it's kind of super obvious that agentic AI is very powerful, very useful, and it is meant to transform the financial industry from the inside out. So that is a fact. And the big banks are just trying to figure it out, how this is going to happen, because it's not clear. Today, there is you have to navigate regulations, especially in Europe. We have DORA and the AI Act. And from my perspective, what I have seen is that you can think of it in two different branches. So one is the idea of using AI to automate existing processes, to make it more, to make it faster, more efficient. And this is already ongoing. It's already happening. I can give some examples. For example, for credit risk scoring, for anti-money laundering analysis, for even portfolio optimizations. So you can have LLMs and the traditional models and methods to have like a hybrid algorithms to take decisions and to help the quants to take decisions and to, remove the pain of crunching huge Excel sheets. And since they are multimodal, they can understand slides from vendor pitches and these kind of things. So they can ingest unstructured data in a way that it was not possible before. So this is one way, and it's already happening. And it is possible because you have more control. Right now, in Sweden specifically, we have many initiatives to have computing in-house, so that we will not be necessary to go and do the inference in a data center that is somewhere in the US on cross borders. So there is a huge push to have the infra and the inference and the training of our own models here. So this is very, very important. The other branch is kind of public agentic AI, and this is where the customers will be able to execute transactions based on agentic decisions, and that is really not happening. Is what I have seen. There are so many constraints when it comes to governance, verification, and security. Basically, this technology is not safe enough for this. And I don't know if under the current constraints, this is going to happen or not. So it's still an open question, but there is definitely branches in which it's extremely useful and others that are very unlikely to happen. Yeah.
I have a question here for the panel and also everyone in the audience. Who here has given like a blockchain wallet to their OpenClaw or their favorite Clanker CLI locally and had it buy something with X402 or on a blockchain in general? We've got 1, 2, 3 people, 4. So a few people have done it, right? But I think if we would then ask in the next step, who here has used something like Claude Code, Codex CLI, some sort of more agentic AI tool in the last few months? Quick show of hands, right? So maybe 5 to 10% of the people that actually use agentic AI have made a financial transaction using agentic AI, just from the sort of small sample size here. But I think that shows a bit that, like, of course, the agents are coming, and we got to figure out how to deal with them. They're coming for us, and then on the other side, they're not spending our money yet. So that's maybe a good thing, maybe not. But yeah, cool, interesting. Devon, Boris, any other thoughts on that? Where are blockchains necessary to enable more agentic finance? Is it, and maybe I'd love to stick with you at SEB, do you see for the banking sector, is there anything where you're like, okay, we're going to have an audit trail on, even if it's like a centralized ledger that still uses blockchain technology, or do you see these sort of things? Do you see a future where certain technical challenges that you have with AI agents working within the financial sector could be solved by blockchain technology, or do you think this is more of a commerce, B2C, B2B infrastructure thing that needs to happen, or do you see this internally at a company being useful from the compliance perspective and so on?
Very important to make the distinction between the public blockchains and the private ones. There is a big difference when it comes to getting ready to take the risk from the high perspective. What I have seen is that when it comes to AI and blockchain, this intersection, it's still not clear where we are going. So most of the Nordic banks are currently exploring. So they don't want to miss the boat if that happens. Today with the stable coins, you mentioned the volume is really high, but this is not retail volume, right? So this is mostly bot based and high volume payments. So we still don't have this as a. It's not ready.
It's not a consumer product.
Yeah, from the consumer perspective, it's not ready. From the private blockchain, is on the exploration side. Of course, there is a huge potential there, but you need to think about it from a pragmatic manner. Does it really solve a problem or not? Because if handling a paper and having real humans just signing for a multi-million deal takes 10 minutes. Like, what is the point to put an agent into that when you have handling this amount of money on transaction? So actually, the agentic thing is much more potential for the microtransactions, kind of. It depends, of course, on the use case and so on and so forth. But you need to be very pragmatic for the traditional bank's perspective. Like, where do you really want to automate? Does this make sense or not? And it's what you mentioned before about the traditional machine learning methods. Like sometimes you don't really need an undeterministic machine to take a decision which is not even verifiable. So I need to be very realistic on this regard. Yeah.
Any other, Devon?
So one thing that comes to mind when we discuss this is you mentioned you mentioned private versus open blockchains, and then, it got me thinking. Okay, so when we talk, what about information that's being hidden on chain, right? Like, if we're talking about agents and making financial decisions for us and making transactions, what do you think about the NASDAQ potentially being on, why can't I think of the name, starts with a C, why am I blanking, the new blockchain? Canton, thank you very much. What do you think about the NASDAQ moving to Canton then? And how do you think that those transactions are going to happen? You don't know, okay.
Or do you have a...
Well, I just think that that's a good use case for blockchain, right? Because like everybody in that sector is getting all excited about...
Can you just recap the situation quickly for uninitiated people?
So if we think about the NASDAQ going 9 to 5, but if it's on chain, it can be there's all this automation that can happen, and it can be there can be trades done 24/7. What do we?
They were talking about 24/5, I think, initially,
24/5,
or something
okay,
like
yeah.
that. Yeah, but sure.
It will change to 24/7.
This is what I read, but we're on the way to 24/7. Yeah.
But that is, I mean, that's huge for agentic finance. That's especially on chain.
Yeah. So you think, and to me, if when we talk about what is needed for agentic finance, and we're getting towards the end, but I think what I would find useful and is to say, okay, for you, when you say, okay, the NASDAQ is moving on chain, that's information that becomes more available or more easily available in a structured data format with a clear API for an agent to interact with, right? So that would be one of the elements of how blockchain can help a financial agent do its work better. I'm sure, Boris, you have some thoughts about identity or like verification, right? As being a concept of where blockchain can help move agentic finance forward. Maybe, Devon, from your perspective, one-word answer plus half a sentence explanation. What is the area, technological area, the problem space where you think blockchain can help financial agents or AI can help blockchain?
It depends on the use case, but...
Where do you see the biggest sort of gap right now in your work and
in my work, I mean, blockchain provides transparency, which then gives us access to, as I said before, what a user wants and how we can help this user. Which, again, if you're looking at it from a user perspective, the agent then can make more decisions on behalf of the user in this sense too.
So you'd say information is a really valuable thing. Cool.
Yeah.
Anyone else, a blocker or enabler that blockchain can do for agents and finance?
I mean, there is one point that's important, is like for what use case. But in a nutshell, Canton, I mean, I know Joël very well from 2020 already when we started doing stuff together at Copper. But it solves for one specific issue, which is also one of those hype, words right now in and around tokenization. The matter of the fact is that you still go through this painful process of having to onboard, Citadel to JP to Citadel, which partially is already there. For those use cases and that type of trading, I don't see a massive use case apart from like solving for the time issue of going 24/7. So it's just a different kind of database that you use in order to trade Apple shares. That's cool. From what César said earlier is like the idea of financial freedom and autonomy, meaning every single one of us being able to, which for example Clarity is covering quite in detail, right? The matter of the fact is I don't know what SEB is paying. I'm a client of HSBC, fucking hate that bank. I've got money sitting there and the interest rates currently are at 4.2% and I'm getting 0.75. Like, makes you question why, right? The idea of having a regulated framework that allows you to click a button, move everything into stable coins, and subsequently click another button, even though you might not know exactly what's going on, but you suddenly start to provide liquidity in some pool that pays you 14% annualized, which 14 is crazy as well, but that was the main problem of the last 5-6 years. Of come to my pool, I'm paying you 26%. Where do people think this money comes from? It doesn't grow on trees. There's a coin that's getting pumped and then you get paid. But ultimately what it comes down to is if you marry those two things up, financial autonomy plus access, a blockchain is a logical place to take it to, because otherwise you're back into a siloed infrastructure like the banks are. You know, I don't want to, SEB is a cool place and like all the other banks are cool too. I'm not a fan, but it's like at the end of the day what it comes down to is that you have ledgers and silos that now need to try to talk to each other, and ultimately all of that is being built in the 70s on something called Cobalt, which is still one of the highest paying jobs if you find some old ass that figures out of how to code in Cobalt. But if you want to really make that move from a world that ultimately allows you to access an asset which is tokenized, you're automatically in the blockchain world, right? If you then sprinkle intelligence on with regards to the decision making and everything else, the logical path would be, in order to stay on a blockchain, like forget crypto for a second, on a blockchain layer. But again, that requires regulated frameworks, that requires a lot of stuff before the big boys start coming, and ultimately it's down to you and me in order to kind of make sure that we push the right things in order to see it come to fruition a little bit earlier. But yeah.
Thank you. I think we have to leave it here. We're getting kicked off the stage. Thank you so much for showing up this early and listening to us.
Thank you. Please give it up for all of our wonderful panelists. Thank you all. It was great you were here. Yeah, feel free to leave. César, Boris, Bohrer-Bilowitzki. I've tried. Beautiful alliteration. Like Concordium, also beautiful alliteration. Now, we're going to welcome various new people on stage. We've heard all about AI agents. They're coming for us. We've heard about getting rid of 90% of the workforce. Don't know if that is also something that we will be elaborating on later, the implications of automation and productivity enhancement and whatnot. What I do know is that we're going to have some sort of 2.0 discussion on the blockchain trilemma. We will also be discussing interoperability in this regard. Now, I believe that we might be waiting for a speaker. Maybe they're already all here. In the meantime, we'll start introducing those that are already around. So Jacob, I already see that you're here. Jacob Stenum, another tricky name, Czepluch, but could just correct me later on. He's actually a DevRel, right? So at Argot Collective, which is a non-profit, independent research and development group. Please feel free to welcome us on stage. Thank you so much for being here. As I said, Argot Collective is a non-profit, independent research and development group that is really scaling Ethereum's core programming languages, right? And tooling, mostly, of course, Solidity. And you're also doing lots of other things on the side, and I believe you're involved with a VC as well as advising and consulting. Now, alongside Jacob, we're also very pleased to welcome on stage Joël. Please feel free to join us. Please put your hands together as well for our speaker. So I can't really clap because I have all these things in my hands. But Joël Valenzuela is the Director of Marketing and Business Development at Dash. And of course, Dash, you all know, is an open sourced digital cash network that is really focused on fast, private, and user-friendly, decentralized financial transactions and whatnot. Now, I saw in my research that you have been proudly living on crypto since 2015, if I'm not mistaken. So definitely an OG here. Halvor, are you here as well? Halvor is already with us. Or has he...
It's going to be a cozy conversation, huh?
No, okay. In that case, Liam, please feel free to welcome on stage everyone Liam Karwan of Chainlink Labs. Now, Liam is the head of real-world assets and stablecoins at Chainlink. Of course, we all know Chainlink is a leading Web3 infrastructure company building, of course, decentralized Oracle networks and interoperability solutions, which is really relevant for this discussion. Gentlemen, thank you for all being here, and take it away, and great to learn from you. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I think two men short. I didn't know that Shirley wasn't coming either.
I will speak enough for 2 or 3 people, don't worry.
Yeah. I think we will manage. We have a lot of things to talk about, I think. So I'll quickly set the scene and then we can jump into it. So one of the things, like Satoshi talked in his white paper about removing third parties. From a lot of the conversations I had here yesterday, it seems like a lot of the people at this conference, maybe not at the audience right now, there are not that many suits I see, are working on bringing back the third parties. And I think we can all agree that the technology we're building is solid, but we have different things that we want to achieve. And the fact that some people want to freeze our money, censor us, and shut us down, that is basically exactly the reason why I continue to work on this, and it's the reason why we started working on this in the first place. And we should not let these, we should not let people kind of change that so that we introduce more third parties or whatever, right? So yeah, I think that's an important thing to start out with. And in this panel, we're going to talk about this dilemma of balancing interoperability, scalability, privacy, and security. And they make up, to some extent, a good part of the defining pillars of the technology. So yeah, I basically refuse to support the view that we should have more compliance and third parties. I think my panelists, co-panelists will agree with this mostly. But anyway, let's try to have a discussion around this. And basically also as the premise for this panel, come talk to me after if you want, but is it okay to give up on some of the core values that we have in favor of third parties that might accelerate adoption of the technology? This is something you can think about during the panel, and same with you guys. But I think it's one of the important questions to ask that I see people kind of talking about these days. So let's get into it. Quick round. It's definitely going to be quick now that we're only 3 people. But yeah, let's start with a quick round. I don't want to do too much introductions. We already had some introductions. Let's just get into the conversation instead. But yeah, which of the 4 values of the panel has your protocol, the project you work on, given up, and why? Because I don't believe you can have all 4 at the same time.
Can you list the 4 again, really quick?
Scalability, privacy, interoperability, and security.
Yes. So I would like to say none of them. Obviously, everything has a little bit of a trade-off as you kind of evolve it. Interoperability, in my case, in the case of Dash, might be the one where it lagged in some other things, but we're very much focusing on kind of establishing decentralized exchange rails and other things like that to sort of aid in that. At the end of the day, I think interoperability is always going to be one of those things that sort of causes a lot of friction. I mean, there's a lot of ways of abstracting that. But as ideally, the other principles should be ones that never get compromised on in the long term. Obviously, there are some short-term things where we prioritize one over the other, or there's technological hurdles that have to be overcome, but I do think that everything should be able to be achieved.
Maybe we will disagree on some points, which is great, because people tend to always agree on panels. So I work as a head of RWA and stablecoins for Chainlink, which means I do work with the suits a lot, and we do hear a lot of compliance. For your question, Chainlink has tried not to remove any of the 4 pillars here that we see. Obviously, there's always trade-offs. We're building solutions for all of it. We are an interoperability provider. We have security solutions. We work on privacy. And obviously, we help issuers, asset issuers, tokenized asset issuers to scale their operations, scale their business, scale their AUM. So as a company, we try not to take any preference here. From the market perspective, what we're seeing is that the key focus from the market today is probably around interoperability and scalability. Privacy is a need that we do see in the market right now. When we talk to financial institutions, we talk to asset issuers, it's not yet a blocker for these projects to actually go in production. What they're thinking of from a tokenization perspective, stablecoin perspective, is go to the market, leverage blockchain to reach as many users as they can, work on utility use cases such as lending, and so on. And privacy is something that companies are starting to think of, and Chainlink already is building solutions for privacy, such as confidential compute, confidential data sharing, and so on and so forth on chain. But it's still not something that we see as a critical need and demand from the companies we work with on the tokenization side.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I also think so. Like the title of the panel does not really cover this triangle of we don't talk about decentralization, right? And I think from my outside perspective, that might be the one that Chainlink is giving up a little bit, because you do run a lot of it in-house and your oracles are to some extent trusted, right? So that's probably the thing that you guys are giving up to some extent, right? Anyway, if we stick to what the title says, then let's move on to the operability. I think we can all agree, as you mentioned, it's a pretty good idea, but it's hard to execute, and it is also one of the areas, especially like bridges, where we've seen the biggest security attack vectors. Like a lot of the funds lost in crypto over the last 5 years have been lost on bridge hacks because of centralization, etc. And it's like in the billions. It's a crazy amount of money, right? So the question is it worth it to do interoperability? Is it better to just stay in your own closed system and use centralized rails to kind of get the interoperability? Joël, I think this is a good one for you, because the Dash ecosystem might be a little bit it's definitely closed, right? But is it a good thing?
Yeah, so with everything, we have to think about what are the goals and what are we trying to achieve here. And so ideally, in a perfect world, which of course we know we live in, right? In a perfect world, one blockchain should do everything. And you just need one blockchain, everything works. Of course, that's not the real world we live in. So at some point when you want to do a thing, you run into the limits of either your own blockchain or the ecosystem, temporary or permanent limits, and then you have to explore something else or just not do the thing. That's when you run into the necessity for a bridge. So I do think that bridges are over necessary maybe right now, because too few blockchains have found a good product market fit for an entire ecosystem. There's not that many ecosystems, like fully developed ecosystems. We're finding at best some very strong product market fits in one or two areas sort of per chain, even a general purpose chain that can do many things. I mean, obviously we have Hyperliquid doing what it does. The Near ecosystem has Near Intense as one of their killer apps, but not a wide range of other things. I think that we're going to find the necessity for bridges to always exist, of course, but to be lessened as each ecosystem starts to sort of someone's doing a drone attack here or something. This is kind of interesting.
Sounds like.
Oh, they heard me. Yeah, so I think the necessity will start to decrease as we have richer, more complete ecosystems. Also, I do think that about security, I think the space does not take security serious at all, or at least maybe not until last couple weeks or something, when all of a sudden we're seeing everything.
We'll get back to security as well.
Yes, so I think that everything has a cost, everything has a trade-off, and I think that the over-bridgification, as it were, might be as a result of people not considering the security cost of the current bridges in the meantime.
Yes, I'll just jump in here because just to add to the conversation a little bit. So I've been in the Ethereum ecosystem and working on Ethereum for 11 years. And of course, we've, especially a couple of years back, everything was about bridges because we have L2s all over the place. We want to bridge between the L2s and all that stuff. And we have a lot of bridges, and we also saw a lot of money being lost to these bridges, right? So I agree that it's this security element. Is it worth doing it? But also at a more fundamental question is probably if we went in the right direction with all the L2s as well. That's one of the things worth thinking about when you have a generalized blockchain as Ethereum that allows you to have L2s, whatever. It also adds a lot of vectors. So yeah, I think that from this perspective, it's probably quite different than Dash, and I'm also a little bit sad that Halvor is not here. I prepared a whole thing, but yeah, we'll take that another time. Yeah, so just from my perspective, bridges, I understand what they're supposed to do, but we have this big problem then that we build these bridges in centralized manners, or we have a multi-sig of like 2 signers, and then you can basically get this full honeypot. And I think that's like an issue we've seen in this space for a long time. People build a centralized solution to start with, a trusted solution, and then say, we decentralize later, and it never happens, and then it comes back and bites us in the ass, right?
So, yes, there's a lot to unpack there. It's a critical topic. For me, bridges is a no-brainer. It is critical, specifically in what we do or what I focus on, which is tokenization. So the concept of bringing illiquid assets or liquid assets on chain. And the goal obviously is to disintermediate finance, is to bring more liquidity, more velocity to trading, more utility, and so on and so forth. And if we take the premise of the goal of tokenization, the goal is to destroy the silos that finance has created. So traditional finance, suits finance is very isolated, built on islands, different banks, not connected to one another. The goal of blockchain is to fully disintermediate that. And so blockchains cannot operate as silos. Basically, everything has to be interoperable. Even for chains themselves, bridging and interoperability is a plus, because sure, you can have assets and users leave your blockchain, but the same goes back and forth. And so it's up to the chains and the ecosystem themselves to provide the right tooling, the right utility, the right applications on their chain to bring developers as well as activity on their chain. On the security aspect, I think the number is right now $4 billion lost to cross-chain bridges hacks. Chainlink, I think, is the only interoperability provider that has never been hacked. And the reason is, yes, I mean, North Korea is doing some funky stuff right now. So, but the reason is Chainlink was built with a security mindset first. So we basically came up with the concept of Oracle 7 years ago when DeFi did not exist. Then DeFi had the DeFi summer, and when you secure so much value on chain, you have to make sure that you are resilient. That's why Chainlink today secures 70% of all the data on all DeFi applications on chain. And we rely on a decentralized Oracle network, which is comprised of 16 independent node operators. The same node operators that have operated for 6 years, securing hundreds of billions of dollars on chain, putting data that is critical, because, if the Oracle network prints the wrong value on chain, people can get liquidated, they can lose money. The same Oracle network that was used for data is now used for cross-chain bridging. So we always built with a decentralized mindset, decentralization mindset first, and security first. So post layer 0 hack, a lot of teams have revisited their stack. I think a lot of teams are not abandoning cross-chain and their roadmap for interoperability, because they realize that we don't know what the future is made of. We don't know which chains will succeed. There's still private versus public blockchains. Believe it or not, we're still talking to institutions that want to build their own private blockchains. And so the future is probably going to be an interoperable one where assets, issuers, investors, users go from one network to the other.
True. Yeah, and let's not get into the whole, should we have one blockchain or several right now. I think we probably would all love that only ours existed or whatever, but yeah, as you say, they can't all do everything. And also talking about that, if we move on to scalability, that's where I prepared a whole thing for Halvor, because he's like a big block maxi, I think, from my research, and which also in some cases mean that not a lot of people are able to run a node to verify that whatever is going on is correct, but it might be that few nodes can actually run this and in a scalable manner. But I guess my question then is it a trade-off worth making? Should it always be possible for anyone to start running a node and verify the network, or do you feel like it's fine if few nodes validate the network and there has to be some kind of trust in these nodes?
Yeah, so I've been kind of on that sort of big block side of things for very many years. I don't really believe that scaling is a trade-off that needs to be made. I think that it's obviously it's so tricky to give an absolute sounding statement like that in a very complex world. But I do think that we can scale decentralized, permissionless technology for the whole world to use without trading off those core principles. Now, it is a little bit of an engineering challenge depending on how you decide to scale, but we're seeing, for example, highly scalable blockchains that are sharded today. We're seeing very high throughput. I mean, that's one thing that sort of Solana stands as, everyone's sort of boogeyman from the early days, but as sort of an example that you can do stuff like this. It's so, for example, that's something that we've never really thought to make a trade-off on, because at the end of the day, we have to think about what's the purpose of this technology. The purpose is to give a neutral, permissionless layer that anyone can use, kind of like a public good for the whole world that's not co-opted by a company or a government or whatever else that anyone can kind of use. And so necessary in those things are decentralization and scale. It either has to remain decentralized in order for it to matter, really. Otherwise, it's an advancement of current permissioned tech, which is, to me, not very exciting. It's an improvement, but not that much. And if it's not available for the world, then it's for a subset, a group of elites who can afford to use it. And in my opinion, that's not very exciting either. I do think that we can scale the technology to reach the masses. Now, I think that a lot of people have gotten sort of hung up on certain concepts, such as running a node on your Raspberry Pi in your basement or whatever like that. And in order for that's like the signal of, is it permissionless? The real question is, of course, can you use it and without anyone stopping you? And if you achieve that, but you connect to a network of nodes that you can't personally afford to run, but enough people run them in enough jurisdictions, in enough areas that you're not going to be censored, that's the end goal. I do think that a lot of people have sort of taken the detour on decentralization and scaling on this concept of, I want to feel good about running my own little node in my basement, and have used that as an excuse not to scale permissionless tech. And we've sort of seen the big, the L2 boom, et cetera, with Ethereum, for example. We've seen Bitcoin's off-chain scaling plans. A lot of that seems to have been sort of fallen on its face a little bit by 2026, right? We've seen a lot of the more modern blockchains scale massively without a bunch of L2s. We've seen the L2s sort of become permissioned alt L1s. I kind of feel like a lot of that detour was sort of wrong-headed, and I think that maybe within a few years, no one's going to be talking about can we scale anymore. It will just be like, well, of course, we have billions of users around the world.
Yeah, I also think that I personally am of the opinion that anyone should be able to run a node. It does not have to be on your phone. Okay, we don't have to I hope we will have the day where you can run light clients and stuff like that to verify everything yourself. That is the vision, right? At least in my mind, it's one of the things I hope to see. But yeah, it probably shouldn't be at the cost of scalability or scaling. On the other hand, you mentioned Solana, right? I also think that the fact that they can have downtime and has had downtime also scares me a lot, right? And it's definitely not for anyone to run a Solana validator or a Solana node. So it has to be somewhere in the middle ground. Ethereum also, you can run a node that you own an RPC endpoint at least, and I think that's something that's very nice to be able to do. That you don't have to trust centralized RPC endpoints. That's something that in my book is important that we do. And I do also think, now that you talked about the L2s, I represent Ethereum, of course, right? That it would be great if we could get a lot of this back on Ethereum L1, so we don't have all this distribution of everything, but actually bring it back on the main layer and scale there. And I do think there are plans ahead of for doing that, and I think it would be nice to consolidate a lot of transactions on mainnet instead of 500 L2s.
So for us, it's a bit different because we're not a blockchain. We're a decentralized Oracle network, and you talked about trade-offs. We definitely took the approach of permissioning. Not everyone can basically become a Chainlink node operator, and it's really a feature, not a bug, and it's because of the critical role we play. So for the people that might not be aware of what Chainlink does or how it works, we there's basically a decentralized Oracle networks comprised of different node operators that fetch data and post it on chain. One of the main use cases is lending. So what is the price of Bitcoin? What is the price of RWAs? What is the price of a US equity? For people to be able to post it as collateral and borrow against this asset. In DeFi, you cannot make mistakes, because again, if you make mistakes, people, again, can lose wrongly money. And so we want to make sure that our node operators are monitored, are highly qualitative when it comes to operating a node, running infrastructure. That's exactly what happened with the layer 0 hack, where basically everyone can more or less run a DVN without proper monitoring and so on and so forth, which basically led to, unfortunately, what happened. And so at Chainlink, we basically try to monitor heavily the node operators. And the node operators of the Chainlink decentralized Oracle network are the likes of Deutsche Telekom, Figment, and other companies that are used to run heavy infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean...
And that comes with a lack of potentially scalability, but it's also because we want to create a standard. That means when a blockchain integrates Chainlink or we deploy our data infrastructure, cross-chain infrastructure, there is no security assumptions made. It's always the same stack of node operators battle tested across many networks, now more than 80.
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, Chainlink also is like a little bit different than what the Dash and Ethereum, right? And it does play a pretty important role, and then we could discuss if like it's too permissioned or whatever, right? But it's also, it provides important infrastructure. I think I want to jump on instead, because like we don't have that much time, and I would really love the input on the last two ones. So I think privacy, it's a big topic, right? It's not really one of the pillars here, but like I think privacy makes it harder to also do some of the other things. Like it's harder to scale because it's pretty expensive to do the cryptography that is needed to do it. Interoperability is difficult because you cannot necessarily see what is actually happening in this private transaction, right? And also the security of the because you cannot audit it, and it is pretty like complex cryptography, as I mentioned before. We have zero knowledge proofs that can help some of this, but I want to go a little bit more into like the philosophical aspect, I guess. I had some questions here for Shirley that we'll have to wait for another time. But basically, in these days, privacy doesn't really seem to be a human right anymore. It seems more to be like, I don't know, something that the EU or whatever they want to have full control over, with chat control and whatnot, and all the self-custody, or like not self-custody, and third parties, and like, yeah, it seems like privacy is a thing that's not easy to achieve these days. So yeah, I want to know, like, what are you guys, like, what are your thoughts on privacy, and are you doing anything about it in the project you work on? I know Dash has some opt-in privacy, but also, like, if we lose privacy, what do we really lose? Also, not just on a blockchain level, but like, how important is privacy and allowing people to have privacy?
Drones again. So personally, privacy is very important for me as a user, as a user of blockchain. You know, when you actually use blockchain and you realize that, you know, everything is traceable, and it's not because, you know, you're doing something illicit, but you have a right to privacy. And of course, it kind of goes against the ethos of transparent, open blockchain networks. But I do think that privacy is important for me as a user. When we talk about enterprise adoption or financial institution adoption, it is going to be important as well. But privacy doesn't have to be a 0 to 1 conversation with enterprises. It can be somewhere in the middle, where it's programmable privacy. It might not be full anonymity. You might want to allow regulators potentially for regulated use case, because these enterprises are regulated, and there's no other way around regulation for regulated entity to work. So you could hide recipient and senders, while still have the ability for a third party or regulator to be able to retrieve that information, which again is not full and total privacy. So again, two ways to answer that. As a personal user, yes, privacy, full privacy makes sense. For enterprise adoption, pragmatically, privacy right now is hard to work with when we talk about full privacy. The use cases that we see, maybe if we talk about use cases, we do see a lot of index provider, stock market exchanges that want to put data on chain. They look at perp dexes, they want to provide prices for perp dexes, but of course, in the traditional world, that's their bread and butter. So if you're an index provider, you see that there is a market for you to provide data to these perp dexes, but at the same time, you realize that if you put that data on chain, it's now available for everybody. So you basically cannibalize in a way your business. And so they think about privacy and how to actually provide that data on chain, on public blockchains, while keeping some privacy on that data and gatekeeping that data. That's some of the use cases that we see.
Yeah, and I also think like it's more about like having the option to have privacy as a user when you need it, like having the right to privacy. I think that's where like the important really lies, and I think we should fight for that right no matter what, so to speak. Like we should not settle with whatever third parties being able to see what we're doing for compliance reasons or something like that. That's my personal view. I understand that, of course, it might not work like that always, especially if we start integrating with the real world. But I think that's one of the problems. Also, in the question I asked in the beginning is like, is it okay that we go back to the kind of the terms where we came from in order to get the adoption? And I think we shouldn't. I think we should fight harder for some of these like human rights that this technology actually enables us to get back compared to the Web 2 world.
I think it's interesting because blockchains by default everyone can build on them, and so that's what's so great about it. Which is, to your point, there's going to be. It's the same as the debate of meme coins versus RWAs. What is needed for a blockchain. It doesn't really matter. You can do both, and on the same chain, you could have BlackRock launching a fund, as well as meme coin traders and more degen applications. And so the same will go probably for privacy, where you will have enterprises that will adopt blockchain for their applications and for their initiatives, and they will have some degree of privacy, adhering to the regulators that they work with, and at the same time, you'll have the option for users, private users that are not bound by regulators or other regulatory bodies, to actually have full privacy. I think that's what's so great about public chains.
And I would like your input as well, and I also would like to hear like your thoughts as someone who have been living basically on chain or purely on crypto without a bank account for 11 years or something. Is like, how have you been thinking about privacy in all this time?
Yeah, so obviously, it should be obvious to me at least, I believe there's two kind of aspects of privacy. There's the human rights type aspect of like the cypherpunk values, the privacy is a human right, that core belief, and building technology that enables that, of course. And that's something that I believe very strongly in. That's something that the Dash community believes very strongly in for the past 12 years. And we're publishing a major overhaul to our privacy function in the next couple weeks. But on a practical level, I do think that privacy is one of those things that was sort of left by the wayside in the crypto world in the early days and is only starting to catch up now. And I think that has been a big mass adoption inhibitor, because the analog world, as it were, right? The non-crypto world is nowhere near as transparent as the crypto world is. All your private messages are not a public display. Your bank accounts are all very private, except for people who have privy access to that information. Your sensitive data, everything is private by default in the real world, as it were. And I think that at some point, having some ways of keeping that sensibly privy to only certain parties is going to be a precondition for this to be adopted at scale. I mean, not every, how many large companies publish every last bit of their financials on an ongoing day-to-day basis? How many how do you know how many purchases are made, how many, everything. It's just not, employee salaries in real time, everything. That's not really something that we definitely see. And there are, drawbacks of not being able to selectively disclose things to certain people. We've seen like an unfortunate rise in, what they call them, wrench attacks in France and Sweden. I was just speaking with a CEO of a local company, and he's basically said, because all tax information is public, where people live, etc., that when you have people coming in with bad intentions, it's like it's a endless field of targets there because of no privacy in that case. And obviously, if you have a very high trust society where that doesn't end up being an issue, that's one thing. But then on the other hand, you definitely want to be able to not disclose some things to people who would seek to do you harm. And especially in an increasingly global world, we're starting to see that there can be some frictions, especially, of course, the whole North Korean elephant in the room, as it were, where...
Probably a couple of North Koreans here even, or
yes,
puppets.
Hi guys, big fan, just kidding. No, but because just like security assumptions that are sort of being left untested because no one really cares to steal, are now being tested because someone does care very much to steal. And it's the same thing with privacy, right? Where people knowing everyone's wealth on chain, everyone's data, everything like that, might have become unexploited largely because people didn't know how to exploit it. And then when people figured out, they largely didn't care to because they're law-abiding citizens in good countries. And then you have people who aren't those things coming in and are teaching some very ugly lessons about the value of privacy. So I definitely think that we're seeing, like, as we're sort of in a bear market right now, but don't tell that to the privacy projects because everything with privacy related to that is doing very well this last 6 months or so, for a good reason. I think the world's starting to wake up to this as a precondition.
Yeah, and I also think like it doesn't have to be either or, as you a little bit put it. It's more, I think that the people should have the choice for privacy when they want it. Like it should. Like having everything on chain publicly, that's also not a good thing, I should say, right? But people should have the option to choose what they disclose and what they don't. And I think, with something like zero knowledge proofs, that's going to be pretty doable. And we do definitely see progress there. I think we're about to run out of time, but we did also start a little bit later. So we have security. I think we just skip the security one, and just so that we all can have a chance to close it off. Like we touched upon security a little bit, and okay, that would be a long discussion, I think. So let's skip that one. So if we take all the stuff we talked a little bit about into consideration, would you say that the crypto has actually grown up or is selling out?
I think that crypto is not one thing anymore. It used to be one thing. And if people who have that sort of old school mindset that crypto was one thing, it's easy to think that it is sold out. It's more that the people who were not in crypto at all are now in their own, maybe corporate version right now. And that's a kind of a natural growth of the space. I do think that too many projects, of course, I tend to be more on the hardcore side of the Overton window, as it were. But obviously, I think that we could all be a little more hardcore, a little more principled. But I do see a renaissance, especially around privacy, as we've seen in recent months. There's still a hardcore belief in that. But also, any technology that needs people to care for things against their own self-interest won't really succeed. The reason why software and tech, in my opinion, is very valuable is because it is very valuable. Because people want to use it. It has a use to people. And if for example, we let decentralization, privacy, etc., if we let that fall by the wayside, that leaves a hole in the market that needs to be filled eventually. And so I do think that as this economy continues to grow and develop, I think that a lot of these sort of philosophical questions won't be so philosophical anymore. There will just be, oh, look at this service, this blockchain, this whatever, that's filling this crucial need that no one else is filling. Look how much money they're making. And it'll kind of go that way. I think that sovereignty is big business.
I think you'll probably guess my answer. I don't think it has sold out. It's a little bit of the same response I gave to the last question, which is it's an open infrastructure. So at the end of the day, applications that are going to build, or companies or individuals that are going to use blockchain, are always going to serve a need. And right now, corporations and enterprises are seeing blockchain as a valid infrastructure to reduce costs and tokenize assets and issue assets and enable trading of tokenized assets. And in a way, I think it even, yes, it comes with compliance, yes, it comes with different things that were not present maybe 10 years ago. But it still goes in the direction of financial access, financial freedom, giving access to traditionally not so easily accessible assets to the masses. If we talk about tokenized equities, for example, we work very closely with Kraken and Ondo and others that are tokenizing equities right now. They are giving access to US equities globally, which is something that for us here, why would you buy equities on chain? It's very easy. But globally, if you think about emerging markets, they don't typically have access to these products. So even if it's corporation, it still goes in the direction of financial access and freedom for people globally.
All right. Yeah, you'll have to find me after to get my take on this, because we're running out of time. But thank you very much, guys. It was a lot of fun and a pleasure to hear your takes on this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. It was really nice. I think that the trilemma and the corresponding trio that we just had on stage is definitely the new fireside. Really nice, interesting discussion, specifically, over the course of like 40 minutes, tapping into all sorts of different protocols and the blockchain trilemma plus interoperability and whatnot. Now, that brings us actually at our first keynote of this morning, kindly provided by TRM Labs, actually one of the important, of course, and key sponsors and partners of Nordic Blockchain Conference 2026. So Luc Dufour, please feel free to join me already on stage, and please put your hands together for Luc. You are the compliance advisor, right?
Yes.
And also financial crime expert.
Yes,
so also crime, yesterday there would have been probably a lot of talks that you enjoyed. You're specializing in banking and cryptocurrency risk management, I believe, and you also worked at organizations like Clearbank, Barclays, and elsewhere. Now, TRM Labs, you're going to speak all about it, but just to show to everyone that I've done my research, it's a blockchain intelligence company that really helps financial institutions, crypto businesses, government agencies and whatnot detect and investigate crypto-related financial crime and fraud.
Correct.
And from my side, please take it away, and great that you're here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good morning, I think, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. My second time in Stockholm in the last month or so, so really nice to be back. If I click with this, do I move through? Look at that. So today I've been asked to talk about, I've tried to get as many buzzwords in the title as possible. So stablecoins, AI, and the evolution of financial crime. So as it says, I'm Luc. I work at TRM Labs, and we work with law enforcement agencies, regulators, and crypto-native businesses, helping them investigate and disrupt financial crime on the blockchain. So when I was thinking about preparing for today's session, there's been a lot of change in the digital assets ecosystem. We just heard about interoperability, privacy, security, and all these new words that are emerging and all these different problems. But I've sort of seen three evolutions that have happened within that context of financial crime specifically on the blockchain. And we're going to talk through those today. So the first is going to be sort of how have the crime types that exist on the blockchain changed over the last 10, 15 years. We're then going to look at, I suppose, the tools and the levers that criminals are using as part of their money laundering and sanctions evasion schemes on the blockchain, so assets and blockchains. And then finally, we'll look at some of the actual techniques, the money laundering methods, some of the patterns that you guys might see in your day-to-day work of how bad guys are abusing the digital assets ecosystem. So to start things off, I wanted to look at, like I say, the widening crime types that we're starting to see on-chain through our research and intelligence work. So if we look, go 10, I feel like a weatherman pointing at this. If we look on the left-hand side, back at 10, 15 years ago, 2010 to 2017, financial crime on the blockchain was isolated within very specific crime types. So we're looking at things like illicit drug sales on the dark web, darknet marketplaces. We had a few hacks that were taking place, and then a bit of fraud too. But pretty much illicit activity on the blockchain, because mass adoption hadn't yet come, and we were seeing, we were essentially seeing a very concentrated risk profile of activity on the blockchain. Fast forward into this, what we're calling sort of era 2, and these time scales are sort of examples, I suppose. There's going to be some slight bleed, but then we started seeing consistent experimentation across all forms of crime. So a few ones here. We see romance scams starting to take an uptick. The big ugly term at the moment, pig butchering of these long form romance scams taking place. Ransomware, terrorist financing, all sorts of illicit activity that was traditionally just sitting within the traditional finance space. I think it's very important to acknowledge that this all existed long before crypto did, and it's still happening in traditional finance, but for various reasons, including the transparency of public chains, we can see it a lot easier on chain. But essentially, we just started seeing criminals experimenting with digital assets and seeing what benefits they could gain from it. Here's a few examples that I was just pulling together last night. I wanted to pull some articles to show this. I mean, the most recent of which is in the top left up there, Iran starting to plan insurance for safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz, currently under the blockade as a result of the war. But Tehran and the Iranian government are actually proposing Bitcoin-based ship insurance to safe transit through the strait. And they're actually looking to codify that into their legislation. So it's actually a piece of law that's going to be passed. We see, as I said, terrorist financing start experimenting. We have this chap, Hisham Chowdhury, who got the nickname in the UK, the Bitcoin terrorist. He sent about £55,000 worth of Bitcoin to ISIS. Not a very good idea. North Korea, obviously, we hear about those, the hacks and the exploits that they are being attributed to. So essentially, we're seeing, like I say, a broad experimentation by criminal actors of how they can use the blockchain. So that's the first sort of evolution that we've seen going back from 2010 till now. More crime is moving on-chain. The second evolution that we've seen is what I'm calling crypto crime's multi-asset era. It's a bit like it's hot girl summer or whatever. But again, going back 10 years ago, 2016, we saw the vast majority of illicit activity in digital assets happening in Bitcoin. I think it was about 97% of total criminal activity that had a blockchain touch point was in Bitcoin. If we fast forward 10 years to now, we see that completely inverted. Bitcoin is no longer really, there are isolated cases, and there are cases, but it's not being used to the extent that it once was in illicit activity. What we see is that's moved to different chains as opposed to assets, but on Ethereum, Tron, and others for various reasons. So we've essentially seen a complete inversion. I think the entirety of terrorist financing related activities, so funding of Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and terrorist attacks both domestically and overseas, was taking place in Bitcoin. Now I think it's completely replaced by Tron and USDT, anecdotally. We see come up quite a lot in our investigations there. As part of this shift away from Bitcoin into other assets and chains, just a couple of statistics that come out of a couple of our recent research papers. So about 60% of illicit activity on the blockchain we think is conducted in stablecoins. This is for the reasons that we'll all be familiar with. That the reasons stablecoins are good for legitimate actors, they're also very good for bad guys. They're stable. Nobody, not even the criminals want to wake up and have 50% of their portfolio gone. They're fast. They're cheap. So they're not having to spend a lot of money to take proceeds of drug sales, human trafficking, and move those across borders. And then that final piece, again, cross-border, so they're easily accessible. There's deep liquidity. So these are very, deep liquidity creates a very big haystack in which to hide as the needle of the bad guy. So yeah, we've seen a real shift, like I say, from Bitcoin back in the days, now looking at stable coins where the majority of this exists. Another stat here, so about 95% of activity that related to sanctions evasion were made through stablecoins. So this is 95% of activity going into sanctioned entities explicitly. So the US sanctions entities, UK, Europe, but also sanctioned jurisdictions. So Iran comprehensively sanctioned by the US as well. So essentially stablecoins are the flavor of the moment for bad guys on chain. One particular thing anecdotally that we're seeing with stablecoins is Because bad actors are very smart and they're adaptive, they're becoming aware of the controls that us, as part of the ecosystem, and law enforcement and regulators are deploying against them. So you'll hear often about the blacklisting of assets and addresses being done by Tether and Circle, these smart contract native controls that they can put in place. If you're a bad guy and you've got some assets and we don't want you to spend them, as a centralized issuer, we can enact blocklist capabilities. The bad guys are waking up to this, and some of the activity is moving away from those centralized freezable stablecoins, and they're using those more at the start of their money laundering cycle. So they get the bad money, they fraud someone, they get a donation from an overseas sympathizer to a terrorist organization. Those happen immediately in these freezable stablecoins. They then swap them out for things like wrapped tokens, looking at algorithmic stablecoins, and the more decentralized, essentially, assets that exist, so that they can't be frozen. And then when they want to get their money out at the other end of the laundering cycle, they swap back into something with a deep liquidity, go through OTC desks, local exchanges in their jurisdiction, and that kind of thing. So an interesting trend that they're learning how we're stopping them, and they're adapting, of course, to counter that. And you don't just have to take my word for it on the numbers. Here's a few interesting cases that I just sort of pulled out there. On the left-hand side here, we don't really see this anymore, to be honest with you. You see these three chaps who belong to Al-Sadaka. It's an Al-Qaeda-aligned affiliate based out in Syria, soliciting donations to support terrorist activities overseas back in the day. This is obviously not the greatest operational security, brandishing your Bitcoin address all over the internet and saying, donate me some money. In fact, it actually says here, donate safely and securely with Bitcoin, which, as we all know, is probably not a very good idea given the transparency. But we've seen a move away from that now, like I say, and we're actually seeing these groups experiment as well with the benefits of privacy native assets, your Moneros of the world, for obviously the advantages that those bring. So the bad guys are adapting, essentially, to the ways in which we're combating them. The third evolution that I wanted to talk about was the complexity of how funds are moving on the blockchain as part of these criminal activities. So these transactions are this is a visualization of what transactions look like in TRM's intelligence platform. But these are transactions from 2013. So we have a couple of EU-based exchanges with users making deposits into Silk Road Marketplace. All the OGs will know this one, the original darknet marketplace. And we're seeing Bitcoin being used, as I said earlier, as was the trend back then. As CASPs and exchanges and stablecoin issuers and whoever it may be are becoming more and more mature in their fight against financial crime, we're seeing less and less of this. You'd have to be pretty stupid to go and try and make a deposit into one of these illicit services on the blockchain without doing any kind of disguising of where the funds have come from, any obfuscation techniques, as we call it. So we're seeing less and less of this. But it does still exist. Some bad guys are stupid. So we saw this sort of intermediary phase where actors started introducing self-custody and what we call intermediary wallets along the way. So I've got some, there's a peer-to-peer crypto marketplace. I'm a user of that on the far left-hand side. Instead of just sending those funds straight to, we've got ISIS on the far right-hand side. I'm going to push the funds into, a cold wallet on the way, self-custody, then another one, and then perhaps move them ultimately onto ISIS. What that means is that this institution on the left-hand side, the P2P crypto marketplace, or if that was an exchange, they're going to be less likely to be able to detect this activity because it's indirect to the entity, but they can't place controls to immediately stop that. If I just tried to make the transaction straight from the left to the right, they're not going to let me do it. So this is the way that bad actors started to circumvent the controls that, again, we put in place to stop them. And then we saw this sort of third stage of evolution, and it's the world we're living in now, to be honest with you. This isn't a map of the known galaxy or some sort of, wormhole or something. This is actually a visual representation of the funds flow after the atomic wallet hack. I think it was June 2023. North Korea-aligned hackers, or allegedly, I better say that, hacked atomic wallet, resulted in the theft of a significant amount of cryptocurrency. This depicts how they laundered the funds. So in the top left-hand side of the screen, we're seeing consolidation from a bunch of Ethereum wallets into that sort of thin line that goes down right at the top there. And then we see this programmatic automated money laundering that took place thereafter. I think there's about 100 intermediary addresses there in that mess. In all of these intertwining transactions, if you're trying to follow that on a block explorer, I can tell you're going to have a very bad time. And this is how they essentially support obfuscating their funds. They've stolen the funds and they want to get them out. They make it very hard for us to follow. And at the bottom, they're swapping, I think, from Ethereum to Avalanche and a couple of other cross-chain swaps just to help them do that. In the age of AI, where we can give a wallet to an agent and we can essentially ask them to programmatically conduct these transactions. These are likely to have been conducted programmatically, so software-supported money laundering. There's no way you could have conducted this many transactions in this amount of time manually. In a world where we have an AI agent that we can ask to do these things on our behalf and give access to the wallet, this is only going to become more and more commonplace as the barrier to entry for the original stupid bad guys that made the withdrawal straight to the exchange or the cash out, they're going to be able to start producing things like this with a much lower barrier to entry and at a much greater scale. So that's something that I'm looking out for, and we're seeing more and more in our casework today. I think coming up on time, we'll skip this one. That's just central bank of Iran. Nobody wants to hear about that. So this all seems a bit like a doom and gloom. So what can we do about it? And I thought I'd highlight a couple of things that we at TRM Labs are doing to support this. The first one is something that we launched in August of 2025, and it's called the Beacon Network. And there's a couple of folks here in the audience who are members of our Beacon Network. But essentially what this allows law enforcement and trusted investigators on the private sector side to do is flag a particular address. Let's say we have an exploit tomorrow, funds will go to an address. Trusted flaggers, as we call them, can flag this address as having received exploited funds. What then happens is, as those assets move on-chain to be laundered or essentially disguised where they've come from via the bad actor, the beacon, as it's called, like a homing beacon, will follow those assets that were stolen until they ultimately reach, we have DeFi platforms, we have stablecoin issuers, we have cryptocurrency exchanges who are members of the Beacon network. We cover over 75% of centralized crypto volume through this initiative. And when those funds ultimately end up with a CASP, an exchange, an alert fires and it says, hey, you've got some really bad assets here, they were stolen a few hops back in the chain. Those CASPs are then connected with the law enforcement officer that flagged the assets and wants to recover them for their fraud victim or for the protocol or whoever it is has been hacked. And then they can start talking about repatriating the money and getting that back to them. So this is the first, as it says, end-to-end financial crime kill chain for crypto, and something that we're really excited about. It's free to join for protocols, DeFi platforms. We work with some of the biggest in the world, and crypto exchanges. So you can speak to myself or Joe here from TRM if you're interested in hearing some more about that to protect your platform. And then the final thing that I'll talk about in the couple of minutes left is our partnership with Tron and Tether. So as I said earlier, stablecoins are attractive to bad actors for the reasons that they're attractive to us. And we see them being abused, to be frank. So we partner with Tron and Tether in order to provide blockchain intelligence to support disruptions through the blacklisting or the blocklisting capability that I spoke about earlier in coordination with law enforcement partners across the world. So far, since launching this initiative, we've frozen about $450 million from everything from hacks, terrorism, sanctions-related activity, and fraud, and have essentially stopped this money being laundered, cashed out, and pushed into the legitimate ecosystem. Probably never to be seen again, to be honest. So those are a couple of things that we're doing about this, like I say, doom and gloom story that I've told you. With that, I'm very conscious that I'm running out of time, so I'll leave it there. Like I say, for anyone that wants to learn some more about the initiatives that we're running at TRM Labs, how you can protect your own ecosystem, your own platform, please just reach out, connect with me on LinkedIn, and love to talk more.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fantastic, Luke. Thank you for coming all the way over. Hope that your second time in Stockholm has been, fantastic so far, epic. Now, that leads us then to the next keynote. I will just swap it to the next slide very, very shortly, because after Luke from TRM Labs, we are going to now hear from another wonderful partner and sponsor of the events. Now, you might have already seen their booths. Indeed, don't forget, apart from the chatting, the networking, listening to the keynotes and panels, also to pass by the booths. Of course, the partners and sponsors and everyone else much appreciates that. And they have information, interesting information always, of course, to share with you and Intel and Alpha. Now, fantastic. So we are moving now slowly to the next slide. In the meantime, I will start with my introduction, indeed, of Gustav Bohrer. He is actually involved as a regional partner for Bybit Nordic, and he's also on the side, by the way, a founder as well of a company called Paytrim. And fundamentally, Gustav brings very, very extensive experience really building regulated payments infrastructure. And he's also very knowledgeable in scaling financial technology ventures. Now, Bybit's Nordic very much support, as the name says, the regional growth of Bybit's global crypto exchange and ecosystem, right here, of course, in the Nordics and beyond. And they're really working hard to, get more partnerships, connect with people, and really spur the financial innovation in the Nordic market. Now, I believe you're mic'd up by now. Fantastic. Please join us on stage and give it up for Gustav, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Being here.
So, nice to be here. I want to focus today on the new monetary protocol that maybe we all know, but we not anymore talk so much about. We talk so much about other things in crypto. But I see a big trend shifting now with AI, robotics, and the next era of internet, that we need to set this perspective right for what's to come. And if you can take the next, yes. So I want to talk about Bitcoin as the protocol for money. And to do that, I have tried to change the perspective a bit, because if you look at Bitcoin, you often look at it with your perspective and your experience that you have. So you have often just have a little slice of what it actually could be and what it actually maybe is. And that's what I did also for 10 years. I was in the payment industry and I looked at it in that perspective, and I saw it like, oh, very expensive payments. I didn't really understand much more than that. And it took me 10 years to actually start looking deeply into it. So with that said, what I now have created is like my interpretation to give a broader perspective. And to do that, I want to talk about like, okay, how can it be built up based on? And then I started to frame like, okay, how is actually civilizations built? And what I see is that civilization is built in layers, especially at the same way that we talk in layers here in the crypto industry. I see that the civilization is also built on layers. And we often live today in the highest layer, the product layer, based on supply and demand, like the business layer that everyone experiences daily. But we also have a layer underneath that called a platform layer that often just runs based on behavior. Like if I can change to this platform and change my behavior to the better, I just adapt to this new platform. And then we have the underlying layer that everyone agrees on often. Like is the core values or core beliefs that is all gathered into that protocol, that is actually so integrated into all of us that we don't even think of it in a daily sense. So I just want to give a few examples of what I actually mean with this. The first example is democracy. Democracy is a very good example of like having the base layer, the protocol layer that everyone knows, that everyone agrees on, that we vote and how it actually works. And then we have the political parties as the layer 2, that you can actually act out your ideas. And then you have the daily framework as the layer 3, the product layer, with the reforms, the governments, and the laws and decisions that we have. So if we take another example, we have the example 2, the internet. And I mean, this is pretty obvious for many that, okay, we live in an internet age. We have the internet protocol that we communicate are connected to. But what we experience is the platforms today, like the Google apps, app stores, and then the products, the apps. So we are in a special age where we actually have experienced a platform shift and a protocol shift here for almost everything. And now we're stepping into the example 3 here I want to give you. A very special area where we have like 3 biggest industries in the world. We have the industry for manufacturing as mainly the product layer. Manufacturing industry is producing products. It acts on the top layer, most of it. And then we have the IT and the tech industry acting mostly as platforms. And then we have financial industry, or most people say like the financial industry is the everything industry, because it connects all industries together. And that's acting then mostly as a protocol for us to do business and do all other industries. So if we look now ahead, what's going to happen and what's happening right now in these three biggest industries? It's actually like we have the manufacturing industry getting robotics in place. So we have the whole industry is built right now from the ground up. And we're going to see more and more robotics taking over that industry. And on the platform layer in the IT tech industry, we have AI taking over and rebuilding all platforms from the ground up. And then on the base layer, the protocol layer, I see, and many of you here maybe see that Bitcoin is in the way of becoming the new monetary protocol. But the funny thing with this is that I probably get like 99% of people agreeing on me that we have robotics changed in manufacturing industry. And the same amount of people often agree on the AI industry going to change the IT tech industry. But not so many still are agreeing that we are shifting into a Bitcoin monetary protocol for the financial industry. And the reason behind that, it's that it's not based on your behaviors that changing to the better, or your demands that changing to the better. It's because your values is changing, or how you actually think of things or look at things. And that's something that we all need to agree on. So it takes time, and it's a mouth-to-mouth project. And that's why like internet took so much time and was questioned so much before it became something that it is today. So we are not like in an age where Bitcoin we have moved away from Bitcoin. We are in an age where we're soon going to see it evolves even faster, I would say, and affect us all. So in this perspective, I often see all other cryptocurrencies and crypto projects is more acting on the layer 2 and relating to the Bitcoin or the monetary protocol as Bitcoin as the base layer. So this is because protocols takes years, and we often don't expect any big difference in the protocol shifts in our lifetime. And if we are lucky, we can experience maybe one big shift in our lifetime. And now we're seeing that we're probably going to see more than 2 in our lifetimes. We have already experienced internet, and we are middle of that. And now we probably are also experiencing a big shift for the whole financial protocol. Next slide. So everyone maybe have heard about Bitcoin, so I'm not going to talk about that so much here. But it's a new framework for money that we can like act on without any government policy committee, and we have this framework to act around our new sort of money. So, I mean, this is the difference we look at today with these different angles. That we have the old system that bases all money on the debt, and to create more money, we create more debt. And then we have Bitcoin that is totally like free. Everyone can connect to it, secure it, work with it, run it. And if you take the next slide, that creates, that is in this stage of what we are right now in AI and robotics, I think it's crucial to understand that the Bitcoin monetary protocol is probably what's needed when we're stepping into an industry in an area where productivity going to be extremely high, and we're going to have a hard time like catching up to that with our monetary protocol that we stay in today. So we're going to try to build a liquidity bridge we're going to print a lot of money to expand this system and to run it as smoothly as we can. But it's also going to create a lot of issues that we need to transition from. And that's why I think we don't need to think that, oh, Bitcoin, I need to believe in Bitcoin, because Bitcoin going to automatically prove itself in this change. Because it's like an equation that is just happening right now, where we just need to be aware of what's happening. So this perspective for me is very important to be aware of, because it affects every one of us. And if we want to be in a transition to more abundance and more productivity to all, we all should think of how we can create more scarcity in our money, and that's what Bitcoin is solving for everyone. So when you shift protocol, you often need to have a cognitive dissonance before you shift, because you're probably going to hold the old truth and the new truth at the same time. And this old truth and the new truth is hard to get in the beginning. So you often just throw it away, say, oh, no, that's bullshit. I know how it is. It has been like this forever, and that's how it is. So I just ask here for you to try to think beyond that pain of question your values and your beliefs. And just think beyond that and see what could it be in the future if we shift to a new monetary protocol. So yeah, I think we are just in the beginning. If you look at the time frame, crypto and Bitcoin have just been here for 17 years. And these 17 years we have a adoption curve of around 8% of people in the world have used Bitcoin one time. And if we want to see this being a normalized thing that everyone using on a daily basis, it's going to be at least 80% that have tried it once. And I think it's going to take the next 18 years to do that. So Bitcoin is started to grow up to like 18 years old, and now we're going to probably see the big shift happening the next 18 years. So now we have stepped into the store of value. We see some exchange happening with like Visa and MasterCard Bitcoin cards and so on. And yeah, that's what we're heading. So, and also if you look at all the assets around the world, we have like $1,000 trillion of different assets around the world. And the majority, the biggest of them is the real estate, the equities and the bond market. And Bitcoin is just right now out at 1.5 trillion. So in that perspective, we have like a possibility to grow at least 100 times from where we are now. And what we are doing at Bybit, we are just building this like product layer for your business, and we want to like connect companies and customers through this new crypto and the digital assets world, and make it easier for you to use it in a daily sense, in a regulated way, together with the governments, together with companies around the world, so we get a more included and connected world with this new technology. And the last thing I want to send with you before I leave is that I think Nordics is actually very good structured to leading this development going forward. Because we have led the technological revolution with internet, and we have built a lot of good technological companies. And when you talk about fintech in the Nordics, we often get from the Americans that we are like a time machine to come to the Nordics. It's like looking 5 to 10 years ahead. So we are open to using the best products out there, and we are open to adapt to new ideas and new technologies without getting like hammered with crazy marketing ideas. We are just open to get the best tool or best product and start using it. And now when we get this amount of adoption in this industry, our products are now getting up to that level that we actually can start competing with the traditional financial scene for real. And that I think we can lead in the Nordics based on that base frame layer of trust that we have. We have regulated clarity right now, and we have this technological base infrastructure that makes it very easy for us to adapt and change to a new technology. So yeah, I'm looking really forward for the next 18 years with AI robotics boosting this industry to a totally new level, where we're probably going to run, besides the old monetary system, over these next 18 years. But I hope in 18 years it's going to be a no-brainer to hold Bitcoin as much as holding a dollar in your savings account. So yeah, anyone have any questions? Then I want to thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Gustav. It was a great presentation. I loved the metaphors that you used as a political scientist and a lawyer myself. Really nice to put it out there. You guys have the booth there, right? So if anyone has any questions, make sure to pass by, of course, and ask whatever questions or doubts or suggestions that you have. Now, before we move to lunch, which is only going to happen later on, we have yet another fantastic panel discussion prepared for you, or in terms of the people who are going to speak, they have prepared themselves, of course, for you, not we. And we're going to speak about crypto taxation. Of course, yesterday we spoke already a little bit about compliance. This morning it was kind of more mixed with AI agents and the protocol dilemmas and the exchange landscape and Bitcoin taking over the next other 60 years or so to come, of course, if it hasn't done so far yet. But of course, now we're gonna speak about crypto taxation and whether or not the landscape is kind of like too complicated, or if we need simpler models, yes or no. And thank you. Please also give it up, right, for the whole team, including Theodora, please, because I mean, thank you so much. Yes, thank you, much appreciated. Like. Fantastic ladies and gentlemen, of course, grabbing the seats for you all. So, first of all, I would love to welcome on stage Maximilian Gardner from Blockbit. Please be very, very welcome. Thank you guys and ladies and everyone else. You are the general counsel at Blockbit, a fantastic company. I also saw you guys last week at Vienna Congress. Yes, I was there as well, and TRM Labs was as well. Now, if I'm not mistaken, you're also a board member, right, of the Digital Asset Association in Austria. Yes?
Yes, that's right.
And you're specializing in crypto regulation, of course, compliance, crypto policy, and Blockbit itself is, if you didn't know that yet, oh, what a nice creature there. Hello! That's hilarious. Anyway, Blockbit itself is a crypto tax and portfolio tracking platform providing compliant, user-friendly solutions for digital tax reporting and portfolio management worldwide, correct?
That's right. We're very happy to serve customers on the retail side, institutions and governments at the same time.
Fantastic. So alongside you, there's also Andreas. I don't know if you're already mic'd up, or no, of course, we only have the hand mic. Thank you. I see the other gentleman there. Please, give it up for Andreas, a partner at Helm Tax AB, advising corporate groups on sophisticated tax strategy with additional expertise you bring as well in blockchain-related income tax matters. And of course, Helm Tax is an independent tax advisory firm serving mid to large-sized domestic and international corporations, correct?
Correct.
Don't dare to disagree with me. No, just joking, gentlemen. Carl, are you here as well? Carl, not. Sorry? Okay, Yuri, please join us on stage, Yuri. I have to say that honestly, I see that you're the head of tax for Divly, or Dively. Divly, yes, and Divly is a crypto tax platform as well, designed to make tax reporting for digital assets more accessible, affordable, and straightforward. And your mission, and I'm continuing, your mission is to help people trade and use crypto with confidence without letting tax worries take over.
Absolutely. That's what we're here to do.
Great. And Marie, you're here as well. Finally, we meet Marie. Thank you, Marie Christine Rinke. You're with Merle Harp Luther, You're a partner there and a board member of Blockchain Bundesverband from Germany.
A German
yes,
association.
fantastic.
Correct.
All right, so you're specializing also in crypto tax advisory for crypto assets. And of course, your firm is a multidisciplinary advisory firm providing tax, legal, and sorts of other help to lots of companies and people, I suppose.
True, that's what we're doing, advising with 3 companies and family offices mostly. So
that's great.
My part. Yeah.
Thank you for all being so polite and standing here. Please feel free to sit down. I believe that we also still have one person though. Last but not least, I really do have another person. We're good. We're good to go. Okay, fantastic. Are you a new addition to the team? Kind of. Yes.
A bit late, but I'm here.
Fantastic. Would you mind just introducing yourself now or when you're seated, as you prefer, but I have no clue who you are and we would love to know more about you.
Yes, happy to introduce myself.
Thank you.
My name is Elvin Folkebrand Sababi. I'm a lawyer, Swedish lawyer. Used to do tax, but no longer touch that. I'm currently I'm the legal director at Somnia and used to previously work at DYDX. So happy to moderate this excellent panel today.
Thank you. Thank you for making it. Thank you all, gentlemen, and Maria, of course. Thank you.
Okay. So that was a lovely introduction. Then I don't think we need to, unless anyone wants to say something more, I think we can jump into the questions ahead. And I assume at least like 50% of the panel is here to understand DAC 8 and CARF and how that will affect their tax reporting. But before we jump into that topic, when I was working with tax, I remember trying to help clients do tax reporting. And to me, it always seemed like a mess. And this question kept popping up in my head. Is crypto taxation so difficult because the taxation rules are old and you're forcing crypto into that? Or is it because crypto is difficult and you have all these elements of, smart contracts, DeFi? So I would like to put that out as an open question to the panel, and maybe Marie, if you would like to begin.
I have the micro, I thought. Yeah, great. So I think it's both, basically, because, if you have these crypto cases, if you just buy a coin and hold that for a year, that's not hard. That's pretty easy. But as soon as you go to the DeFi space, you have so many options of earning income, of generating yield, and that's the point where it gets harder, I would think. And then, at that point, you have to analyze that technical case, basically, and then you have to find some tax regime or some tax rule where it actually fits, and that's the hard point, probably. And that's the fun point as well, because you can analyze and you find some rule where it might actually fit, but. Yeah, and you have the data problems where we will get there, and the documentation challenges. So, like documenting every single transaction in an accounting is just heaps of work. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd really like to add to that. Like what you mentioned, that are the tax rules too complex? And I think that really depends on what you're trying to do. As a regular investor, I don't think you're going to want to have to read through all the regulations anyway, even if they were simple. So I think what really matters is, are the regulations comprehensive? If they are very complex, at least I hope that tools such as Blockbit and Divly can understand the regulations and build a tool to help people actually pay their taxes. But for that to be the case, the regulations at least have to be very comprehensive. And like you mentioned, sometimes you have to look around and see, well, which rule actually applies in this specific scenario. But yeah, so as long as it's comprehensive, I think the regulations are fine. So for example, actually in the Nordics, I think the regulations are relatively comprehensive compared to some other countries. So even though they're very complex, it's still very usable. Now, a counterexample, if you actually look at Poland, the tax system is very easy. It's just you declare each time you buy an asset and each time you sell an asset, very simple. The problem there is their regulations are not comprehensive. And so you actually find cases where the government's position on certain transactions is different from the tax authorities. And then we as tax software, we will have to provide users with both options and have them decide what to actually do with the transactions. So yeah, for me at least, how complex the rules are is not as relevant as how comprehensive they are. And I think the actual bottleneck, which we'll get into later, is more about data quality and data accessibility, essentially. Either of you have anything to add? Yeah?
Yeah, let me take a step back here. When we're talking about complexity, is for the typical user of a crypto exchange, anything that they have to do where they have to declare their own taxes is already unacceptable complexity for a lot of people. We in Europe, we're not used to having to declare our own taxes in a lot of situations, including in traditional finance. So I think that is already a complexity that we have to bear in a way, and we have to guide other people through it, and maybe that's through professionals, maybe that's through software. But then I think the other way of looking at complexity is that the typical crypto investor, the typical crypto user interacts with finance products in a way that they wouldn't. They access products of a certain complexity that they would not do in traditional finance. You create your own custody solutions. You trade back and forth. You create yield-bearing mechanisms. You wouldn't do that with. No one here is trading foreign currencies, but you do probably trade a lot of coins back and forth. So all of a sudden you're entering into a space that perhaps is already this complex, but you're doing this very easily because the barriers of entries are very quickly. And that is a really difficult conflict because ideally, in a perfect world, no one of the panelists here would do the work that they do right now. Ideally, this is all done automatically. But unfortunately, and I think that's my pessimistic take here, is that world is not possible. You give up so much usability of the Web3 domain in exchange for easy taxes. So just a final note on that complexity, I think it's baked into the system, unfortunately. And what you said, Yuri, is very right. The real problem is data quality. So you will remember when the moderator introduced us at the beginning. Both Dwellir and Blockbit were introduced by, we make this easy and efficient, because the import part is the difficult part. Getting your data into one place is the difficult part. It's not the actual tax rules. They might be unclear, and that is another unacceptable form of complexity, but the real complexity lies long before that.
Well, a lot of good things said, but to add to that, I think there really are layers to that answer. As you mentioned, a lot of the crypto transactions they tend to mimic traditional financial transactions, and a lot of them complex financial transactions. And in that sense, the transactions themselves are complex. If you go back 60 years in Sweden, we didn't have a separate set of rules for financial transactions as we do today. And the reason they were introduced was because of the complexity of the transaction and the special form of those transactions. Selling a stock or shorting a stock is not the same as selling a share. So because of that, we had to introduce a specific set of rules to address that type of transactions. And those types of transactions, when it comes to crypto assets, are not within, these rules are not applicable to, and I think that's, it's the same type of problem we had 60 years ago. But that said, there's also a problem of translating crypto transactions into something comprehensible from a traditional point of view. And a lot of things that I do in my line of work is just translating information from transactions and from the data that we receive to be able to provide to the tax agencies and to explain what the transactions actually mean and try to reason and how they should be tax based out of that. So I think it's a sort of a mix in between the two.
And I remember. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add to one thing you brought up, Maximilian, was that it's really kind of embedded in the system that you need tools like us, or you need someone to help you with your taxes, and that this is different from other asset classes. And I really want to highlight that, like why this is really the case. So, for example, there's a Norwegian exchange called Fieri. And if you only trade on their platform, they can do your taxes for you, no problem. But as soon as you actually do something simple as sending crypto to your own wallet or to a different exchange, suddenly Fieri no longer has all the information it needs to do your taxes for you. So now you need all these different exchanges and wallets that you use to communicate with each other to then actually declare your taxes. And for that, then you need technically a tool such as Blockbit or Divly, where you can submit all your wallets and exchanges at once, and then we do the taxes for you. But as it stands, it's very difficult to just integrate the entire tax ecosystem into crypto without an intermediary system, unfortunately. At least that's my view.
Just to add shortly to that, I think that problem is relevant in traditional finance as well. So if you trade in financial products in different banks, none of them will be able to provide a full tax statement for you. So I think it's an old problem. It's just a new setting for that problem, and that bridge has not really been built yet.
Is there an intrinsic issue? And I remember reading a report from the Swedish tax agency in 2024 where they said that I think 90% declared their crypto taxes wrong, and because it's difficult, not because they're not trying, but because it's difficult, and that also then results in a lot of people not even bothering declaring their crypto taxes because they're afraid of doing it wrong. And I'm wondering, is there an intrinsic issue here that we have tax rules designed maybe from a custody perspective, but then you have self-custody, and in DeFi you can have custodian staking, you can have self-custody, smart contract interactions, or you get a liquid staking token. Like, are the rules, like, should we just scrap all the financial rules and instead try to build it up from scratch, or how should one think of this problem from a holistic perspective?
Just quickly, because you brought up starting from scratch. So yeah, we do see that a lot of the tax systems set up for crypto are just based on the existing tax ecosystem. We do see some countries actually try and really build it from the ground up. So France, for example, they built their entire tax system just for crypto. And this did end up simplifying a lot of things, but we're still seeing a lot of the same reoccurring problems, so you can't find your entire transaction history, you can't reconcile it properly. So even if you build a system from the startup just for crypto, you're still going to run into a lot of the same problems, is my thoughts.
So the data issue.
Data issue, and I mean, would you really be able to build it from the ground? You have new use cases by the day, don't you? So it would be all within such a short period, I would say, yeah.
I just want to add to that when you say, can you even, build rules for all of these different situations? And I think it was on the Norwegian tax authority website where they explicitly mention everything DeFi is taxed. And they won't go into details on exactly what that means, but they're just trying to make it comprehensive. Just everything's taxed. Don't bother asking us, it's taxed.
To build on what Maurice said, I think the type of transaction it's changing so fast that just rebuilding the set of rules that we apply will help the problem for now, but not in the long run. I think even that with the evolvement of the technique in general, but with the blockchain space, I think that a better sort of dialogue between the blockchain business, the private side, the legal side, and the private experts and the tax agencies to quickly catch new type of transactions and have a proper dialogue in order to jointly find a way of tackling them with an existing set of rules. I think is the fastest and the most productive way of going forward, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a final word of caution here is that I think you can optimize your tax system even if you build it from scratch in new ways, and you can do different trade-offs, but you probably can't do the whole triangle. You can't have it be easy of use, you can't have it be effective, and you can't have it be comprehensive at the same time, because the underlying material is complex. And then, for example, like an example from Austria, right? Like we have a very easy tax system in a way. We just gate it at the end and have a withholding tax at the exchange level, for example. So that is very easy for a customer that's only within one exchange. They don't have to declare the taxes at all. This is very nice. But then you lose a lot of liquidity on the way out. And if you, for example, contract with more than one exchange, you're losing out. If you contract with more than one exchange and one of them is not in Austria, all of a sudden the whole thing breaks down. So the provocative question I would ask back is it even possible to build it from the ground up and have everyone be happy there at the end? Not even talking about tax rates, but is there a system that can be appropriately complex for the type of material that you are regulating? And my guess is no. My guess is this will have to be this complex, just how traditional finance and the taxation of traditional finance is very complex because the underlying material is complex.
Yeah, I think that's quite spot on, and I guess it ties into what everyone here said as well with the data issue, and also Marie, like you said, the technology is evolving so fast. So you might have one system today, and in 2 years it's mute, or you have a new product that doesn't fit within that category. So I guess conclusion is it still remains a difficult topic to deal with. Now, moving forward, I think as a lawyer, I've gotten this question many times. Am I screwed because I have been using a centralized exchange and I haven't declared my taxes? And that question comes from people having heard about DAC 8 and CARF. So maybe, I don't know how, if everyone is up to speed on that. So maybe if we just do an introduction of what those regulations means, maybe Marie, if you could help both myself and the audience explain.
Yeah. So under DAC 8, the CASPs are reporting transactions starting 2026 to the tax authorities, and they don't report every transaction, but they report it in an aggregated way. So, for example, all acquisitions in fiat are summed and reported in one category. And the tax authorities, they will exchange the data. So if it's reported to the German tax authorities, it will be exchanged with other European authorities. And so now the tax authorities have much more information than they had before. But I'm not quite sure what they're going to do with that, to be honest, because, I mean, it's a transparency norm. So actually, the tax authorities know, well, he had crypto, he traded crypto, but they don't know that's a taxable income. It just doesn't, it's not to be calculated from the DAC 8 data. So no, not really. In Germany, for example, we do have that 1 year holding period, and it's tax-free after you held it for 1 year. So it's still reported in the DAC 8 data. Yeah. That's cool. So if that's working, that would be cool, but that wouldn't be working in Germany because there is that regime where it's tax-free after 1 year. So yeah, what's going to happen? They know, well, you had taxable income, and then probably they're going to send a letter to the taxpayer saying, well, you had some crypto income, would you please explain? So there's going to be a lot of back and forth, and probably at least extensive exchange with the tax authorities, maybe fines, see what happens. So it's going to be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds interesting and scary.
Yeah, and at least from Swedish implementation, there's going to be a question of will there be enough time for the tax agency to actually work through all of the reports that are being filed, because the deadline to file the reports in Sweden is somewhere mid-April, and the deadline for filing your private income tax return is the 1st of May. So there's not very much time for the tax agency to process all of this information, which of course puts a lot of burden on them to have a system to sort everything out, allocate it to the right person, to the right individuals, and then do something about it. So I think at least from year one, there will be maybe not that much happening for the tax filing, but they will gather information and then they will pick what they believe is most interesting, because I think there will be a lot of reports and a lot of people who have not filed anything historically that they will gain information from. So.
Yeah. So I just want to add to that with when the tax authority receives your data. So the issue is that in 2027, when you're filing your taxes, exactly, the tax authority might know everything about or knows about your transactions in 2026. If you don't report them by May, the tax authority still knows that you actually have made transactions in 2026. So you won't receive a warning necessarily before the tax deadline that the tax authority knows that you own crypto. So it's a big risk for individuals who haven't been declaring their crypto when they don't declare in 2027, and then the tax authority later on in the year reaches out and says, hey, we know you actually own crypto in 2026 and you didn't declare it.
So let me share a little bit from our core markets in Germany. Typically, they will look back about 5-6 years. Yeah. So the clock is ticking now, right? Like DAC 8 reporting is already happening for this year. They will send this over next year. But if you are flagged within that, they're probably going to look back for quite a bit, and they might ask you personally for some transaction data, but they might also just ask the exchanges directly, and they will have to comply as well. So that's also important to know that you cannot really stop this. If you are in the system already, you are becoming more transparent than maybe you perhaps want to.
I forgot my point.
But just to add to that, of course, there's always been the liability to file your taxes. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, it shouldn't come as a surprise for you that you have tax liable transactions. That said, there's a question of how will the format of the reported data be? Will that be shared in any way with the respective taxpayer? And will the taxpayer be able to translate that format into what they were actually supposed to file in their tax returns? Because the format of that data will not necessarily be the same that you're supposed to put into your income tax returns. So there is still a large amount of work to do with that data for me as a taxpayer.
Yeah, indeed, the DAC 8 data is generally not enough to do your taxes in most countries. Now, maybe in the Netherlands it was the case that with the wealth tax, if you just know the value, you can declare that. But even now in the Netherlands, you have changes coming with capital gains tax, so you can declare your actual gains, and that causes a bunch of problems that are not necessarily in DAC 8. So yeah, the problems with DAC 8 are coming. It's not sufficient to do your taxes, and then you receive this form with all this general information, and you don't really know what to do with it. One solution I do see, so for example, in Finland, they have their own kind of DAC 8 model where local exchanges will be providing tax information directly to the tax authorities. And this is sort of an addition to DAC 8/CARF. But we're not seeing this around most of Europe. So it's really a small use case where the DAC 8 information is tied to tax information.
And I thought it was interesting that the user doesn't really know what has been reported, and he's not entitled to get the same data or the same report. So it's not, I mean, there's GDPR, so probably he has some right to receive that data, but he has the right to receive some data, his data, not the DAC 8 data. So that's very interesting how he's supposed to solve what the tax authorities are asking from him if he doesn't know the data. So, yeah.
Yeah, of course, it creates a clear data symmetry. Is there an issue as well with when you don't know the data and maybe they have data that they think you have calculated wrong? Are we like opening the Pandora's box here for people? Obviously, everyone should declare their taxes, but let's say you've declared them wrong. Could that then also have like a rollover effect in terms of, maybe you thought you had to pay 10k euro, but instead it's 15 or 20k as well?
Maybe if they know, I mean, they can't calculate, but still there might be a mistake in the reported data. And how would you clarify that? Who do you address for clarifying that? And how do you know that there has been a mistake? So you're not even aware if you're not aware of the data that has been reported. So, yeah.
I think Maximilian and I had, I think, our faces light up a little bit before the meeting where we talked about data quality. Because it's quite rare, I think, that people really are aware of the issues in data quality in crypto, and it's nice to be able to talk to someone else who faces the same struggles, trying to help people declare their taxes when the data quality is so low. Now, there's many problems with the data quality. So, for example, one thing we found, and this data is a little bit outdated. It's a few years ago we looked at this, but we looked at all the crypto exchanges that we supported, and we looked at, do they all provide comprehensive, complete transaction history information? And we actually found that 60% of exchanges had at least one of their data export methods that was incomplete in some cases. So, if you then end up using multiple exchanges, you increase the risk that some of the data is not complete. And it becomes a whole Pandora's box, as you say, of trying to get all your information correctly and then use that for your tax calculations.
Yeah, let me add on that. What we're seeing with some of our more sophisticated users on the tax side, so more the high net worth individuals mostly, is that they will end up choosing the exchanges that make this reporting easy, that have good data quality, that have good ways of exporting data. I think the masses are not there yet, and we'll probably steer them there through other regulation. For example, when financial supervisory authorities enforce certain data quality, perhaps through the supervisory work. But right now we're already seeing people offboarding from certain exchanges because they say this is too much risk. I cannot get the data out, or I can only get it out in a certain format. Perhaps I can get API data only for a couple months looking back. And so what we see right now, especially in Vienna, where there's a lot of new exchanges creating the micro-licensed entities, is that they typically use a lot of the tech stack that they're already using, but they build the data quality layer in a new way, or they overwork the API and export functionality. So I think it's getting better, but data quality is really the core issue, because even if the exchange goes away, or you cannot recreate your transaction, or you cannot carry over cost basis, and so your calculations are, for whatever reason, you don't even know, because software handles it for you, they're not correct. And then you get audited at some point, and the people that audit you, they know their stuff, right? And then what happens is they ask, well, where's this information coming from? Why is it faulty? And you say, well, I couldn't know this. The institution didn't give this to me. The exchange didn't give this to me. And the authority will say, that's on you. It is your choice. It is your responsibility to choose a way of transacting in order to create this report. So I think we are already seeing some small steering effect in this direction. I think this will increase, especially in the European area, and I would imagine especially in the Nordics as well, given that there's a bit more sophistication on both the regulator side and the institution side. Yeah.
I wanted to share maybe a little anecdote about the data quality, because I think most people assume that when they download their transaction history from their exchanges, that it is going to be complete, it's going to be comprehensive, and then all you need to do is submit it to a tax calculator or provide it to your accountant, and then it'll be fine. But that assumption is I think quite wrong. I was reading some crypto tax forums, which I'm a big fan of, and they were talking about one of Blockbit and Divly's competitors, and how angry they were that they were not able to read the transaction history correctly from one of the largest exchanges in the world. And I knew that transaction history information was not actually present in the export from that exchange. But I, of course, as a competitor of them, I didn't correct the user in the forum. But yeah, essentially just in general, people assume that their information from the exchanges is complete, but this is not currently, I would say, generally correct. Yeah.
Yeah, that's also a big issue and quite unfortunate if you can't trust the data you're receiving from the party that's supposed to take care of that for you. If we consider it an outsourcing, which to some extent it is, right? Let's leave that topic for now. I feel like it got serious and maybe we scared some people in the audience. Let's, given that we are here in lovely Stockholm, let's focus a bit on the Nordics. We have 5 minutes, okay. So we have 2 people from the Nordics here and 2 people from the outside. So with that said, is there a unified Nordic approach to tackle and deal with crypto taxation, or is it a fragmented market? Maybe, Yuri?
My initial impression was no, and that's still the case. So on a fundamental level, some things are very similar, of course. So in the tax rules, yes, trading crypto is taxed, receiving staking rewards is taxed, but that's kind of how far the similarities go. Other than that, some countries in the Nordics are way better at getting people to comply with the regulations. Some are better at creating comprehensive regulations. And I think there's actually a lot more that can be learned between the Nordic countries to improve, rather than seeing it as one Nordic model from which we can help expand or help others, essentially.
Andreas, you're a Swedish expert on this topic. Where does Sweden sit in all of this?
I think given the numbers in compliance, especially where Sweden shows up very, very low in terms of compliance rates, I think it's easy to blame the existing set of rules. There's also a question in terms of what happens when I file my income tax return. How do I make sure that the data is complete and that the data is understood and accepted, especially. So we've seen cases historically where you have the data, but it's not accepted as fully. The data itself is not accepted as fully compliant. And I think that might vary somewhat between the Nordic countries as well. And I think that is also one of the major reasons that the compliance levels in Sweden is as low as it is. Because since it's been like that for the past 10 years, I've been helping people filing their income tax returns for the crypto income. I think in a way, if you file your tax return and you don't get the result back that you expect from the data that you supply, I think that tends to make people a bit of afraid, and that just has to do with how certain can I be that what I file is what I receive back, and that the tax that I pay based on what I file is the tax that I will end up with. So I think that's a major question from a Swedish perspective.
Absolutely, and from the outside perspective, Maximilian, what's the view?
I think Gustav before had a slide up that said why is the Nordics a great bed for innovation for crypto adoption, right? Like high technical sophistication, like a lot of experience perhaps with certain financial instruments, including innovative ways of instruments. I think all of that is true, and at the same time you do have very high level of digitalization on the authority side as well. We see this from the outside. So I think that's all good there. And then you have a lot of these unnecessary mean things when it comes to the actual tax code, like how do you get to use your losses, perhaps? Maybe we're not quite there yet. So can they lead, as the title of this session, can they lead with a simple model? Absolutely. Is this pole position? Are they leading currently? I don't know. I'll say it like this. Marie, maybe the view from Germany.
I would agree with you. So when I was asked that, I didn't really know about the Nordic regime, to be honest. So I figured that out, and I was like, well, it's not that special after all. So, I'm a big fan of the 1-year holding period in Germany, so I wouldn't want to skip that. But still, I feel like it's a very digital country. So the tax authorities are much more digital than they are in Germany, and that's a big advantage. And
yeah. Okay, so room for improvement, it sounds like, across the board. I saw that we had a question over there as well.
Wait, hold up 1 second, and then I do have to say that we cannot escape from death and taxes, and also not from lunch. So this is going to be a last question. Okay?
Last question.
I have an important question regarding Sweden. Linus Dunkers was taxed. They took everything he had in taxes because tax authorities did not accept his papers. I would like to ask you if you know more what happened in his case, because this makes me really worried. I'm considering to come back to Sweden, but if tax authorities can take everything, I'm not sure what to do.
Yeah, that's a very unfortunate case. Andreas and I have actually discussed this earlier. I think he's your guy on this topic. I don't know if do we have time for that? Okay, let's do it.
Let's do it.
The short answer, I think that case is fairly complex. It wasn't just a case of what type of data that could be supported. It was also a classification matter. So, what income class was his income supposed to be put into? So the main, and that was the decisive factor for the amount of tax in the end that he was liable to pay, I would say.
but perhaps before we get kicked off, and please do feel free to get your salad bowl while we're still talking. I think the bigger question that you're asking is how important is tax code and authority posture for the attractiveness of a jurisdiction? Do you push the ecosystem away? Does it impair the health of the ecosystem? I think an example that you give is a negative one, for sure. But at the same time, I think, and maybe this is the professional bias that we have here, is that a functioning tax code in certain ways is probably helpful for the ecosystem. It's a cost of admission to a healthier, more professional, more safe business for the users, even if it is very unattractive for certain individuals. And especially every time I do have to pay and declare my taxes. Perhaps your opinions on this as well, and then we'll wrap up.
Or no, already. Maybe in 3 words, but really, guys.
I think we're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's 3 forwards. Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you. Let's take this over lunch, right? How about that? Thank you all for having been part here. Yes, really appreciate it. I'm going to wrap up really fast. Thank you, gentlemen. Also, Maria, of course. Now, I've seen a really cool mascot over here. Do you have like free hugs for lonely crypto founders or those who are sad that they have to pay taxes? That would be fantastic. Yes. Okay, thank you all for having been here this morning. We'll be back later in the afternoon with some discussions about stablecoins, about the Nordic landscape. Maybe Marie mentioned it's not that important or interesting from a tax perspective. Well, from other perspectives, it might very well be. We'll also be back here to talk more about DeFi and a little bit more about compliance as well, specifically for the institutional side of matters. And also a wonderful fireside chat between Zenith and Pegasus, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm not. See you back soon, and thank you all. Enjoy your lunch.